This week in PlayStation, we're talking about Ghost of Tsushima's final patch being out. So what's going to be next for Sucker Punch? An enjoyable union between video games and music that ends with a platinum trophy, and why Naughty Dog shouldn't make another Uncharted. We'll have all this and more because this is PS I Love You XOXO. Welcome to the show, everybody. That's Blessing. That's Janet. I'm Greg, and you can get this show on patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames, of course. There you can watch us record it live like the Trogs are right now. You can get it ad-free, and you can get the weekly post show. If you have no bucks tossed our way, it's no big deal. Support us on the Epic Games Store by using the creator code KindaFunny. It works on Fortnite, Rocket League, and Fall Guys, even on your PlayStation 5. And you can get PS I Love You XOXO, of course, for free, with ads, without the post show, over on youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames, Rooster Teeth, and podcast services around the globe each and every Friday morning, our new day. Thank you to our Patreon producers, Fargo, Brady, Pranksky, Tyler Ross, Delaney Twinning, First Responder ND, Julian the Gluten-Free Gamer, James Hastings, Casey Andrew, and Anonymous. Today, we're brought to you by Credit Karma, but we'll tell you about that now. For now, let us start with a PSN message from you. Blessing Janet Mike Hurley writes in to patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames, just like you can, and says, what is in your PlayStation 5 starter pack? If someone has finally been able to get their hands on a PlayStation 5, what are your top 3 games they should get to play right as soon? I fucked it up. They should play to get the best out of their new console. I'm so close to having the whole thing done. Damn it, Mike, I screwed it up for you. Also, Mike smells it with a Y, which I always appreciate.
Oh, Mike with a Y. Yeah. No, that's I did not notice that. MYKE. I've never seen that before, actually.
They call me the world's greatest detective, Blessing, because I noticed the little things like that. That's why I'm so good at video games.
What's the color of the shirt that Janet's wearing right now?
It is a mustard.
Okay. See, I would call it more of a burnt yellow.
Don't start this shit. Don't bring Tim Geddes.
It's my Arthur sweater, which I didn't realize until after I had already bought it, unfortunately, where one day I put this on and I put on a pair of blue jeans, and Isaiah then informed me that I looked just like that meme with he's like, can you make the fist?
Yeah. Arthur wears a collar shirt under his sweater, yeah or no?
So it's not, it's like a modernized cosplay that I have going on a little bit.
But you're bounding. Like when they go to Disney and they don't dress all the way as the character.
Yeah, because they're like, well, we take that shit seriously. You can't just be dressed as the characters. You can get as close as you want, but you can't be full on.
Did y'all see the end of Arthur? You see how they ended that thing?
I saw the image of him looking all busted.
That stuff was crazy. Oof. Didn't DW become a cop? I was like, I mean,
you got the bad ending of Arthur.
Track,
it was one of those. I was I guess you're never too old for cartoons and Arthur, but I was not like a child when Arthur was airing, but I remember I was young and I remember watching Arthur, like, when I come over from school or whatever and enjoying it enough because I'd grown up reading the books. And so like, I have a connection to that show. I had no idea it was still running. And so, when it was like Arthur ended everybody and here's the final thing, and I clicked on it, I just got so mad. I was like, well, I haven't known about this in a decade. I'm like, what the fuck is this ending?
Did you not want them to like grow up, or like what was the beef? Like it was the classic like trope of like looking into the future very conveniently to kind of wrap up, some loose ends, I guess.
I mean, it's just like what was Arthur doing? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what he's done in the, 10, 15
like, I don't know. It was a nice kind of, like tie-in. It was a little bit cyclical. I think, endings are really hard, especially with shows. Sure. I think that's a pretty solid one. But yeah, I did tune back in for that after all the memes of like, how adult Arthur looks, which...
He looks like a video game journalist. Like he looks.
He's 100% at PAX right now. Like,
he's for sure at PAX.
Oh, Arthur's at PAX big time right now.
This man has a podcast with 3 other men, and he's like, "These are my best friends in the world." This is like 100%. 100%.
I love that we're 100% roasting ourselves, by the way.
100%. Oh my god, totally. I mean, that's probably why I get so angry when I look at it.
This is why I have the sweater. But I mean, I don't know. It was an interesting era for like child stuff. I feel like this last year, because they also had like that intense Blue's Clues thing of like Steve coming back.
That was poignant.
And being like, I know you have debt and depression, but like I want you to know I'm proud. I can't even go over it because I'm like, I got so emotional watching that. Like,
dude, I'm looking at the image of Arthur right now, and he looks like he writes articles for GameSpeed.
He looks like Jeff Grubb, you think?
Like he looks like if Jeff Grubb and Mike Minotti had a baby.
Bear, when you're back,
He
I
has
know
the high
Bear,
score
I
on
think you gotta
Whitewater
step away.
Wipeout.
But if
You know
you're
what I
back
mean?
already,
Like-
I've slacked it to you. I've slacked it to you. If you can get eventually this Arthur image up. So
He likes
people who
speed
don't-
runs in his free time.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
a game that none of us heard about too.
This man was alongside me watching you roll credits on that Final Fantasy game in the Twitch chat.
Oh, but
He was watching my
he's the one
Stranger
telling you.
Paradise
He's,
stream.
100%. He
He
was all
is
in the
giving me
Stranger
tips on
Paradise
Genshin
stream.
Impact. Like he's telling me like, hey, this is how you unlock all the good characters and how to
See,
get
I
them
guess
in
that's my
meta.
thing is you're spinning a very positive adult Arthur off of this image. I'm saying he'd be in there correcting your pronunciation of everything and acting like you don't know the source
No.
material of Final Fantasy. That's what I get off this Arthur.
I refuse to believe
he's
that.
smiling is the thing. Like he seems friendly.
He's a friendly man.
Oh, they
It's
all
just
seem
when you
friendly
tell
till
him
they
to
turn
shave.
on you. They all seem friendly
This
till
is
they
looking
turn
at a
on
darker side of what I mean. You're not wrong, but I choose to believe that this is the,
Also, what's on his shirt?
different
Like
angle.
on his shirt, he has the
it's-
rabbit. Is that not his best friend?
Baxter. No, it's him as the superhero. Because remember Bionic Bunny? It's Bionic Bunny, no, isn't it?
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Barrett.
Yeah, that's definitely Bionic
here.
Bunny. I feel like.
See that
See, I
again?
wasn't an
I'm
Arthur
so
kid either.
I'm so detached from the source material now. I don't know, but
Like,
like
actually-
Arthur, put sleeves on your fucking hoodie vest. You know what I mean? Let's start there.
He's got to show
He
off
is
them
doing
guns,
the constant like the hot. Am I hot or am I cold? But I feel like now that I live in LA, I too have like rocked a "Are you hot or cold?" look, and it's like I'm a little bit of both sometimes. Because in the morning,
Joshy G,
it's kind of cool.
Joshy G in the live chat on patreon.com/kindafunnygames says adult Arthur gets timed out in a lot of Twitch chats.
Oh no.
Why do you have
That's
to
what I'm
make-
saying. We're all nerds. We're
I'm not gonna
all. I'm
lie.
a huge loser nerd, but I'm just saying this Arthur's got problems.
I'm not
He's
gonna
a
lie.
nice
I've
nerd.
seen this man. I've seen this character before, right? Like where I go on Twitter, I tweet something, and then I click show more replies. I've seen this profile picture in show more replies. I've seen this face.
I've
would
seen
use a
I've
weird
seen this
anime
face walk
avatar.
out of the bathroom of like a convention and they haven't washed their hands,
God damn.
Yeah.
Arthur did nothing wrong, by the way. This is just all, us all
Anyone can catch
projecting.
a stray on this show. That's what I've really learned. Like,
Blessing. Mike Hurley has finally run into a PlayStation 5 and/or is assembling a list for his hypothetical friends who have done it. Maybe Mike Hurley is Arthur. Maybe he doesn't have any friends, but he has hypothetical friends in this situation. What are you saying are the must-have 3 games?
It's funny because I thought this was an easy question until I thought about it more, and I was like, man, we've had a lot of games for the PS5 that like in my order of what are the most essential games to get have shuffled around so much because if you asked me this maybe a few months ago, I would have said, oh yeah, the answer is easy. You get Spider-Man Miles Morales, you get Ratchet and Clank, and you get Returnal, right? I would say that would be my easy go-to. Now that we're past a year, about a year and a half into the PS5 being out, that list is shuffled around for me where like Returnal's still on there for me. I think the Returnal is a very essential PlayStation 5 game to get just for the one, it being this more focused in like gameplay focused arcade house mark, really cool game that feels different and feels fresh, feels unique from a lot of the other things you get on the platform. But then also a game that takes advantage of, hey, yeah, it's the PS5. Here's what the DualSense can do. Here's like different gameplay elements with like how you press R2 with the adaptive triggers and pull in to do your special move and all that stuff, right? Like it takes advantage of that. You feel like the rain droplets and the haptic feedback, like it does a lot of stuff with the DualSense that I think is great. And then also how it runs and how it looks and how it takes advantage of the SSD with like how seamless it is when you're running from room to room. I think all that stuff feels so PlayStation 5 and all that stuff shines through Returnal. And Returnal is just a fantastic game. And so that's my number one on the list.
And so this is where I want to go first off before we go. You're ranking them, right? This is your number 1 game for PlayStation 5.
Based on recommendation, sure, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd
I'll
say
say
that's
Returnal
fair.
is my number 1 game.
Because this brings up another chat over on patreon.com/kindafunnygames. The question is being raised, of course, by Eric Miller. Do cross-generation, cross-platform games count? Or are we going purely with PlayStation 5? Because if they have a PS4, they can play the cross-gen games. Yeah, there's so many different things. And the way I approach this, because I like to, of course, we know Janet Garcia, roller skating, marathon training, teaching.
not training anymore. Already marathon tavern. Marathon metal owning. I don't know. I figured you would thought something new for this time, so I don't really have.
Well, I dropped it, so I
I
never have to use it. I was like, dusting off
Marathon
an old
completed.
chestnut here to have
didn't
fun.
notice that. I feel like I should have at least gotten 1 week of it. Like, why did I do
You
this?
did. We had a
all
whole big
for?
thing. We had a big conversation. Remember when you weren't here for it? You weren't here.
Right,
We
but,
talked
like,
about
and
like,
I-
yeah,
and
could we do it? Because it
I'm not
seemed
gonna
pretty
lie,
easy.
I loved listening to that episode. Like I played that like on my own, I think with like Isaiah or something, and then later like me and my family listened to it on the car on the way to the bar, and then we like we also played the trivia game that you guys made at the
Yeah.
end as well. So
Yeah.
it was really fun.
I like that one. Well, thanks for stepping all over this, Janet, and ruining this bit. But what I was going to say is, Janet, a teacher. And so I did the show my work kind of thing where I listed out, I came down to my top 3, but I had a whole bunch of other thing there.
So I can see where you went wrong.
I listed
really
games and I
Saving us
crossed
time.
off the ones that didn't even get to where I thought they would be in the top 3 kind of thing and got there. But for me, to answer Eric Miller's question is, I kind of cleared the mechanism. This wasn't, I tried to check the usual hypothetical stuff at the door. You have a PlayStation 5. You're excited to have a PlayStation 5. What would I tell you to get on it? And that's where I started. So I do have one game on here that's a director's cut. I put Ghost of Tsushima director's cut on here at number 2 for me. But blessing to where you're at right now, I put Returnal on there. It was my number 3. Because again, everything you just said is that it's a fantastic fucking game, of course. And of course, we're shooting, this is the problem with these hypotheticals. What is this PlayStation 5 owner, this new PlayStation 5 owner like and stuff?
Yeah.
We don't know.
What is their taste? What have they played before? Like, we don't know.
So, but you're in this scenario, I would assume you're asking us, one by one. So like for me, I was like, well, Returnal I would put on there because it is such a masterclass in gameplay. It is such an enjoyable game. But then, yeah, his question is like, to get the best out of their new console, like few games do it as good as Returnal does when it comes to getting the most out of the PlayStation 5. Like you're talking about the SSD, we talk about all the time, feeling the raindrops on the controller, just the way the haptics feel. Like Returnal's a special PlayStation 5 game.
Yeah. And I think for me, like the way I interpret this question also is like, if you were to buy a PlayStation 5 today and you can only get 3 games, what are the 3 games you should get? And I would say Returnal for sure. Like it is one of those 3 games. To your point of like, what are we counting? Do we do cross-gen? Do we do all this other stuff? My number 2 game is Elden Ring. I would say Elden Ring is a for sure game to get. And even if you are somebody that, might have gotten it on PS4, I'd say like even get on the PS5 for how good it runs, like getting the performance mode, getting the resolution, getting the frame rate performance out of it. I think that's enough to make it feel like a better experience. And then like it being an incredible game, right? It being again, if you're getting a PS5 and you're looking for 3 experiences out of it, right? Returnal for the gameplay, for the arcade aspects of it, for the feeling of the third-person shooting on all that stuff. Elden Ring for something to get lost in. If you're looking for a game that you could spend anywhere from 30 hours to 100 hours in, and you're looking for the RPG elements, you're looking for equipping items, equipping armor, all this stuff, Elden Ring has that, right? If you're looking for an open world to explore, Elden Ring has that. If you're looking for a narrative that you kind of have to like work for and like uncover and talk to characters and do all that stuff, Elden Ring has that. Elden Ring, as far as like the big RPG action adventure, Elden Ring is easily on that list for me. And then, do you want me to? I can tell you my third one right now. Let's see.
Well, I want to jump off that too to how I kind of put together my list here, because I was at the same thing of when I sat down, I overthought it, and I was like, do I want to put a different genre on there every time? Do I want to do something? These are the 3. This is what you're going to be. This is where it should be. And again, for once in my life, I tried to check all that, and instead I just cleared the mechanism, and I was like, what would I tell you, like, are Greg Miller-ass games to put on there, right? And so I already said I have Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut on there at number 2. The one I have in front of it is Spider-Man Miles Morales, where, again, 2 open world games, that you can go through. Obviously, they play incredibly different. Obviously, I think Ghost is, far longer, let alone the Director's Cut's giving you Iki Island, and it's also giving you the multiplayer, so there's more to do there and that kind of thing. But in the grand scheme of things, they're both open world, action adventure games you're going through and do stuff. But I felt the need to put them both on there because I love both those games so much. And looking at this in terms of a blank list, what could I give to somebody? You know what I mean? I don't know who you are. I don't know what I would tell you. You're coming to Greg Miller. You know that I like open world checklist games. I put it on there. And I was surprised personally that Ghost of Tsushima beat off Horizon Zero Dawn. I'm sorry, Forbidden West. Mm-hmm. You smirked there when I said beat off because I did. I smirked internally too. I was like, oh, that's not right, but it fended off Horizon Zero Forbidden West. We
could have just, we probably couldn't have just kept going, to be honest. So
no,
that's fair.
I was down to keep going. I didn't acknowledge it. I didn't think Greg would acknowledge it, but
I know that you're a pervert. This has been proven that you're a pervert with the near stuff.
I'm not denying it anymore, right? Yes, I am. All right. I'm 7 hours into 13 Sentinels, Aegis Rim, and I can't deny it anymore.
Oh my God. Anyway, just kind of not unpacking any of that. For me, when I was looking at this list, 2 things. One, the classic, whenever we have to make these lists, if you don't get the doc first, I'm like, well, I don't want to like say what's already been said. So I kind of just I saw you guys' list. So I'm like, I want to bring something new to the table. And I did sort of favor, I think, experiences that are like PS5 exclusive, and or at least like a PS5 optimized version. Like first I started with just off the top of my head, and then I like actually like booted up my PlayStation, and I'm like, let me go to my collection, filter platforms. What are the games that are like PS5 games that I've played, even if they are cross-platform? And then of those, what are, I think, some of the best experiences that I feel like are at least my highlights for the console. Like if I was making a list, I would kind of start with these games and like whittle away from there and make it like a top 10 or something. So, you know, out the gate, Ratchet and Clank, I think it's like one of the most beautiful looking games on the console. It's one of the games that, you know, truly looks and I think feels and is sort of designed around next gen in a big way. So if you're looking for like, you know, I have this new thing. I'm excited. I want to see what it can do. And I want to also finally get to have these experiences I haven't had. I do think you definitely, like for me, I would always start from a place of the exclusives, which there aren't like a lot of pure like console exclusives. But if I was interested in any of those, I would be jumping to those first because that is the freshest thing that I definitely have not played or experienced. From there, I also thought, you know, again, other things that have really marked my time with the PlayStation 5. Sackboy: A Big Adventure is one of those games that was like, okay, there's not a lot out. Like we're running through the things that are there. But admittedly, like the more I've played that, the more I've grown to respect that game. I think that game is super overlooked. I think even when it first came out and I played it, I kind of underrated it, where I'm like, okay, well, yeah, it's a good platformer, but it's not quite the same as Little Big Planet. And like, I guess it's cool there's a Bruno Mars song in here, but like, it's not like it's the Rayman, you know, music levels. But the more I've gotten into it, there's just so much content in that game, not just in terms of like the costumes, but like the side content, the speed run kind of challenges that are on the side, or like
they're great.
They're really great. They're really well designed.
The ones where you challenge your friends or the world or whatever.
Yeah, and I think they're like the sort of ones with the very minimalistic level design. It's like weird kind of blocks. They kind of remind me. I don't think they're like quite on this level because that's pretty hard. But like the crazy stuff in like Mario Odyssey, like that kind of hellscape of platforming, they're a little bit reminiscent of that. And I think those are really cool. And then just the creativity level to level. They have so many different mechanics that they'll introduce. Like there's one ability that where you're basically just Iron Man, and like me and my family are like, oh, this is the Iron Man one. Okay, cool. We're like shooting. We're looking for this stuff. Like I have enjoyed that game more and more as I've continued to play it. And then I don't know, I feel like we're all saving our last one for like at the end. So I don't know if you want me to like
go for it. Well, honestly, Janet, what I'm more interested in is what did you look at the list and say, oh, well, I don't want to repeat myself? Like, did you like what games from ours were you already initially like, oh, I'm going to put that one on there, and then you went, blessing.
Well, Greg, yours gets a little funky because you have like the stuff underneath 3 is like brainstorm stuff, right?
Yeah, that's where I was like, yeah. So the ones that, so like, if you were to look at the doc, ladies and gentlemen, which you can, I have a bunch of games that have strike throughs that have been struck through, and then ones that are still there. The ones that are still there were in the running. The struck through or ones that games that I love. Like again, to Blessing's point when he kicked us off,
I'm stealing this one.
There's so many fucking good games for PlayStation 5 right now that it's easy to go through and fucking. And again, I was trying to figure out why I would put where I would put it. So yeah.
Okay.
And like, I mean, and with that, right? Like I was looking, and you mentioned Horizon Forbidden West earlier, and how like, yeah, like I'm surprised that barely made the list. That was one that I was like, oh yeah, that'll certainly be number 1 for me. And then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, oh no, I don't think Horizon's on my list, because my number 3 is like a toss up. It's like a tie. It's like equal ways. So I'm cheating a little bit. Is Sifu and Deathloop. I think either way for like a third game to have on the PS5, either one is a good choice. Sifu obviously for like if you're looking for an incredible indie experience, but then also something that has such a dope gameplay loop and such dope visuals, and like that you can get lost in for that arcade experience as well. Like that is there for you. And then Deathloop for the gameplay there too, right? Like when you talk about meaty games, like Elden Ring I have on there as a meaty game. Deathloop I think is meaty as well, in terms of you can get lost in it. You can get lost in like finding the gear, finding the abilities, going through the loop, no pun intended, and like you know, getting lost in a game that feels so different and so fresh. I think that's the thing that has both these things on my list, is that both these games feel like games that haven't been done before in this way. You know, Sifu, with it being a beat 'em up game that has this age mechanic that makes you really think about how far you want to push yourself, and then Deathloop in a way that has this like, cool, we're very non-linear, we're very time-based, right? It's like an open time game. Jump in at any time of day at whatever area you want to jump into, and figure things out at your own pace. Both these games feel so new and so different, and I think they're in that essence, they're both must plays if you're picking up a PS5.
But Blessing, I need you to pick one or the other for Mike with a Y, who you don't really know their gaming taste whatsoever.
I don't know their gaming taste whatsoever. I would say Returnal, Elden Ring, and I'd say Deathloop, because like Deathloop is translatable for like people who like first-person shooters, right? Like, you're gonna like that if you like that. You're gonna like, if you like stealth, you know, you're gonna like Deathloop. Yeah. Sifu I think is a bit more acquired. So yeah, I'll put Deathloop over.
Like I've said before, Deathloop is definitely Arcane's pop album. I think it's definitely more easier to get into.
Yeah, for sure.
I think too, like for me, well, I don't want to start anything, but like I think that's just a better game than Sifu. Like if I had to rank them, and granted, I did not like get into Sifu the way like a lot of like you guys did. I'm still waiting for like where's that patch to make it easier? Where's it at? But yeah, I absolutely adore Deathloop. Like that was my game of the year last year. Yeah, that Deathloop's a great recommendation. So Greg, do you have Horizon then recommended?
I don't know. For my the three I came down on were Spider-Man, Ghost, and then Returnal. Then
for my third, I gotta go Horizon because like that game's awesome. I still want to play more of it. I played more of it after we had already done our review. I still want to go back and platinum it. I've just kind of been waiting to like, you know, part of me's been waiting because like Isaiah still hasn't beaten the game. Like he got really far, so he like is done with a lot of the bigger deal spoiler stuff in my opinion. Where I'm like, thank God I can like
you can openly talk about this.
Yeah, I can like kind of like exist in this world, okay? But I still like don't want to like play, even though they don't do a lot of spoiler stuff in the post game. Like there is like a common kind of theme bark that sort of tells you like how one storyline ties up, and it's like not a big deal. But I'm like, I don't really want you to have to, you know, deal with that. So like that's one reason I haven't played, and then, you know, just kind of time and this, that, and the other. But yeah, that game's awesome. The more I play it, the more I love it. I have very little criticism of that game other than maybe like if you don't like that formulaic design, maybe. But
for me, what's interesting with Horizon is I can't wait to get back to it. I feel like there's just so much other stuff to play right now. And I wonder how much it's going to reinvigorate my passion for it. Because I am not sitting here saying like, man, I regret saying it was a 5 out of 5. It was an amazing game or whatever. I don't. Like, I love Horizon. I think it's great. But it is that thing that when I put it down and walked away, I was like, fuck, I wish I could platinum this right now. But now we are months away, and then in our lives, multiple reviews and games away, that it's still like, I'd love to get back to Horizon, but I'm having so much with Anno. I really want to keep going. But I was also really enjoying No Man's Sky. I hope I get back to that soon. And it's like, there's that recency bias of what I want to get back to, and then it becomes even backlog seasons now, blessing as you know, but we are burning through it already. Where it's like, if I don't get to Horizon and Platinum it soon, when am I going to get back to Horizon and Platinum?
Yeah.
Yeah, if I mean, looking at the Blessing Super Fun Game release calendar,
thank you.
Find
This
on
is
my
always
Twitter.
where I go. Yeah,
of course. Yeah, at Blessing Junior. God damn it! Why is this file so skinny and small? Hold on, let me open this in a new tab. If I go to the end of April, right, like that, we have Stanley Parable coming out April 27th for the people that are into that. You also have Nintendo Switch Sports, if you're somebody with a Nintendo, right? Like Trek to Yomi is early May.
Somebody with a Nintendo. If you're slumming it with a Nintendo, you got this coming too.
If you're one of those Nintendo
I have to
players,
say, like, it's a PlayStation
you have the Game
podcast.
Boys.
But then also, like, you know, if there's the play date there, and like a lot of this is niche, but like this is going to be for a lot of people more to talk about it, right? Like Rogue Legacy 2 comes out April 28th. Vampire the Masquerade Blood Hunt is April 27th, right? Like we're quickly approaching the end of backlog season. And then like maybe after Trek to Yomi, backlog season kicks up again, but things are quickly getting busy.
I think too, though, like, I mean, again, those are my three official recommendations are Ratchet and Clank, Sackboy Big Adventure, and Horizon. Like if I could only pick three, those are the three. The other ones I was tossing around, much like you, Greg, of like thinking of what's there. Chicory, because that's like very high up on my list for last year. That game's awesome. I think to like Blessing, to your point, bringing up kind of the technology side of things. It's not the most like mind-blowing use of the DualSense or anything, but it does utilize it in the touchpad, and I think it plays really well on that console. I think
you use the touchpad for Chicory?
Yeah, you can use the touchpad for Chicory.
I don't know if I used it once.
I did too. I think I
was that like your main way of playing?
Tripping? I think
no, you definitely could. I used it. I remember
right?
using it.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I did a mix, but you can, you know, it has like a little sound design coming out of the little speaker. Again, it's not the most like, it's not a showcase of the DualSense, but it does have some integration there. I think the trophies are like really good. And I also think that, you know, in terms of, again, thinking of the identity of the PlayStation, like that was a game that I'll always remember as being a PlayStation game, even though it did come to like other consoles and things. It kind of got its start there. And I think its identity is kind of tied to it in that sense. And then, you know, shout out to other like indies, like, you know, Kena Bridges Spirits. I never remember.
Kena.
Yeah, oh God. Yeah, I was never gonna know. It's fine. You'll sense it when you look it up, right?
It needs an accent.
That game's awesome. Yes. You know, Toem's another great indie. Demon Souls, I think, is a fun one. Like, if you're someone that's looking at like our list, you know, this person that wrote in, Mike,
and was like, Mike asked for 3 games, and we're just listing all the games.
Well, I mean, this is how it always goes. Honorable mention.
Can't list all the games.
He still has the top 3. Like, if you want to only go with the top 3, you have our top 3. Because the fact that these games didn't make my top 3, but you know, like Demon Souls, if you're someone that sees like Elden Ring on Blessing's list and you're like all into that, that could be a fun fun either replay or first time playthrough for you. And then I had to give, I was looking at my collection that I had on my PlayStation. I had to give a shout out to Overcooked All You Can Eat. That is like the next gen version of that game. That's awesome. If you like, even if you owned like 1 and or 2, like it could be nice to just buy that as like a nice bundled package that has all the DLC as well, because chances are you might not have like picked up all of those. Like certainly I didn't, or I never finished like one of the games at least. So that was kind of a time for me to just go through like front to back. And that is honestly probably one of my favorite games like ever, Overcooked All You Can Eat. Like,
too bad you didn't put it on your list. We asked for 3.
Yeah,
Mike asked for 3.
I didn't.
It's
and
that's
not my 3. Yeah,
I'm not even gonna run through all my
he's never gonna
strike-through
play
games.
it, but that's
We gave Mike
that's
every
what I
single
have.
game on the PS5. So good luck, Mike.
No, that is not true. I'm looking at some games on my PS5 that I did
Mike-
not mention. I didn't mention Guardian. Like, there's a lot left
Mike,
on the
while we're
table
here,
here.
get Agent Intercept. It came out.
No,
last
we're not
week.
doing
my
this.
God.
This is supposed to be a short segment. You've all gone too long. To close it out, I did figure out why I didn't like Arthur. He's the kind of guy that would say this shit. Go ahead and embarrass it. This is the kind of shit Arthur would send to me on my way.
Christ.
You know what I mean?
Jesus Christ.
Wait, Greg,
I mean, Arthur is right. Arthur seems like a stand-up individual. if he
Near
thinks that-
Automata wipes the floor with any game you gave.
This
a
is
10 that I've
really
seen
funny.
game.
But
This
also
is
his
like-
facts. Yeah,
this is
it
probably
seems like
one of the
Arthur spits
best.
facts. Arthur's
Let's
not
move
afraid
on to
say what's real.
topic of the show, ladies and gentlemen. We've titled it, and when I say we, I mean me. Naughty Dog shouldn't make another Uncharted game. We will start at VGC with news from Tom Ivan, who writes, a Naughty Dog recruiter has seemingly hinted at plans for more Uncharted games. A newly appointed recruiter at Naughty Dog has seemingly hinted that Sony is planning future Uncharted releases. On Tuesday, Christina Marie Drake McBrearty announced on McBeardity?
McBrearty.
McBrearty.
I love hearing you struggle, because before KFGD, when I read the same story, I had to like sit down and really like think to myself, how would I say this person's
Our
name?
jobs are so simple, number one, but then also the little complications. And I want you to know, I'm like in my head on Tuesday, Christina nailed it. Marie nailed it. Drake, oh God, it's still going. McBrearty, damn it. Announced on LinkedIn that she had joined the studio this month as a primary recruiter. In her post, Christina Marie said she is, quote, scouting for talent at every level. And it's, quote, it's special being able to be building future teams for not only new titles, but for the legacy of Uncharted. And this is the thing that launched a million tweets, a million articles, a million Kinda Funny Games dailies. Janet Garcia, marathon run. Do you believe that saying new titles, but the legacy of Uncharted means more Uncharted games?
Yes, because I don't know what else that would be. Like it could be something else, but it seems like it at least has to be some form, even if it's just like, again, they already just did the sort of Legacy of Thieves collection. So like that's kind of the first thing that comes to mind with like that sort of thing. But I feel like it'd have to at least be something tied into the universe, even if it's not like called Uncharted, but like it'd have maybe some of the same characters or some of the same like, general universe, or like, it'd have some mechanical tie-ins. Like it would essentially be another Uncharted game, even if it's not part of the, I guess, proper mainline series. So that's at least what it implies. Like I can't really imagine what else it would be. Like it'd be really weird to word it this way and have it not be anything at all related to the Uncharted franchise, whether that's remakes, remasters, spin-offs, or what have you.
Blessing out of you, Junior. What is your take on, but for the legacy of Uncharted?
I don't really know how to interpret that. I think I lean towards Janet and saying that, like, yeah, like I don't know why you would say that and have it be a oh, actually no, we're not doing anything with Uncharted. I'm just mean like legacy is in like, Uncharted exists in all the games we do. There's Uncharted in Last of Us, there's Uncharted in the new IP. I feel like that's weird phrasing for it, but also like I think all of this is weird, right? Like this is coming from their bio on LinkedIn, which already is like kind of loose in terms of using that as a source. And then like, what does she mean when she says this? I think the thing that's more interesting is thinking like, all right, like if we are thinking of the future of Uncharted, like Naughty Dog as a studio, obviously like that was their title that like blew them up during the PS3 era. That is a title or an IP now that I think PlayStation holds near and dear, and an IP that we've talked about it over the last few years that PlayStation would like to see more of. We've had the stories of Ben Studios pitching a solely Uncharted game. We've had stories of like I think it was PlayStation Visual Arts Group that was considering doing the remake of the original Uncharted game, and then they were like, actually, no, we'll do the Last of Us remake instead. Uncharted is a thing that I think has a future regardless of what this recruiter is saying or not. That said, I think the question is, like, what is the future of Uncharted, and is Naughty Dog making it? And does this imply that Naughty Dog is making it? To that, I don't know.
So
Greg, what about you?
It's so loose and it's a recruiter, and I'm totally there that it could just be the wiggle room of especially being able to be building future teams for not only new titles but for the legacy of Uncharted. Like, that sounds like you're making another Uncharted or something in the Uncharted universe more than like, because I could easily see the response being, as Janet pointed out, well, everything we do is in the legacy of Uncharted. It's the legacy of Naughty Dog and yada, yada, yada. And at that point, that's where we come to not even the question, but the statement I put out that Naughty Dog shouldn't make another Uncharted, which is what I believe. I don't want Uncharted. I do not want to go back to Uncharted. And I don't want Naughty Dog specifically to go back to Uncharted because I want to see what they do next. I want to see them do a new IP. I want to see them continue to iterate and change and, be a studio where I like the idea that, every generation from them would have a new tentpole kind of thing. And I know it gets a little bit fishy with that, but you understand where it looked like for a while where, they had their PS2 games, Jack, and then they went, okay, cool. And they had Crash with PS1, and then they had Uncharted with PS3. Then Last of Us is both of them, but then more Uncharted. Yeah, I'm sorry. Bless, what do you
got? So I have two questions. One, what do you then do? Do you then just want Naughty Dog to do something new? Like, do you not want to see Last of Us either, or are you talking about specifically about Uncharted? And two, I guess, like, if you do want to see more Uncharted, regardless of like if not Naughty Dog doing it, right? Like, if you want to see Uncharted outside of Naughty Dog,
sure.
Do you think we'll get Uncharted as good as Naughty Dog has given us?
So I'll start with number 2. Uncharted should stop. Period. Full stop. Barrett, I appreciate you booing me. You know that I'm a huge Uncharted fan as well. And so I say this knowing that whenever Naughty Dog, Sony Bend, some other PlayStation studio announces they're doing Uncharted and we get the trailer, I'm going to mark out. I'm going to be excited. I'm going to look forward to that game. This isn't me saying I'm done with Uncharted. I just feel that Uncharted 4 was such a perfect ending for what that was. And it stuck with, and Janet's stewing. She's getting ready to do it.
No spoilers. I was like, if you ruined this game.
Have you really not had the ending ruined for you?
Well, now I feel like just saying that, yes, that is true. That being said, I'm sure someone somewhere will do that as a result.
No. Don't,
like,
if people listening to PS I Love You're all here to hang out.
There really is. I mean, there isn't really, but like, I'm still like, I'm going in fresh. You know what I mean? Like, because it's such an old game that like, I don't know. I'm not
going to spoil the ending of it. I just think it ended so perfectly with a bow on it that, I mean, inarguably, it has the best ending of any of the Uncharted's, and it's the ending of, and this isn't a spoiler, Janet, right? You saw lead-up coverage that they were like, we're ending Nate's story. This is the end of Nathan Drake and Uncharted. You've heard of best, right?
Sure, I think I have. I mean, it's kind of like, that's like
the game's also called
anyway.
Thieves End.
It is, but like,
clearly that's what they're talking about.
Trilogy, right? But it's like there's like 4 of them, so I don't know.
Quadrilogy.
Anyways, though, so yeah, I think it ends so well and so perfectly that you need to step away from it, and I think that you then have this incredibly loaded thing where, oh man, Uncharted doesn't need to be Nathan Drake. Of course not. We had
Lost
Legacy. Thank you, Lost Legacy. I had Legacy. I couldn't get the rest
Chloe
of it.
Nidian.
Yeah, we had Lost Legacy, right? And that was a really good game. I know, Blessing, it's your favorite Uncharted, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong. Like, I think those exist. I just think that they are going to be painted into a picture of having to do Uncharted quote-unquote tropes and things that Uncharted would do, and you need certain things in there to make it feel like Uncharted that I don't think Uncharted, even as just the name, I feel has a legacy to it, and it has a bunch of tropes and has a bunch of things you need in there. And I think that shadow is too big now, that I don't want to see Naughty Dog do it and feel like they have to put things in there that they maybe wouldn't have before, but they're trying to honor the games that have come before their legacy. And then I don't want to see it handed off to another studio because you are in a lose-lose at that point. You can go talk to Sony Bend about it and like what it was like to go make an Uncharted for the Vita, right? And like have an arm tied behind your back in the fight already, because of course everyone's going, well, you're not Naughty Dog. And yeah, and I'm sure they're like, you're right, we are not probably with the best studio working in video games right now. You're right, we're not. We're trying to be, and we're trying to do it on a portable that is brand new, that needs to have touchpad, that needs to have the camera, you can see the weight sinking.
Uncharted VR, and it's story driven. It's just choices. You're just looking at different stuff happening.
It's just Jan, we're just sitting in a theater and it's like an Uncharted play. We don't play anything. We're just like,
I mean, it doesn't have to be like, no one said, not that wouldn't like be good. Like, anything can be good, but it doesn't have to. It can look like whatever at any point, which is both like in some ways liberating, and then I think also like horrifying. Again, I have to like quote Natalie Flores, who very brilliantly, I think it might have been on our the drunk cast that I did with you, Blessing, and everybody else.
Drunk, for the record, not drug cast.
Yes, drunk cast.
Yes.
Anyway, because that's so much better. I don't know. Anyway, we were like talking
drunk
about
cast makes it sound like we're just popping pills, talking about video games.
I
We're popping alcohol, talking about Last of Us.
I'm going through. I'm just gonna barrel through this sentence. Anyway, she said a story's over when capitalism says it is, and I think that's so brilliant. I think about it all the time, and I think that's highly accurate. I mean, you know, Greg, to your point, right? It's like even if we sit here and say like we want one, we don't want one, whatever, we're all gonna play it, so it doesn't really end up mattering. And obviously, like we don't, you know, buy it in the sense that a lot of times we get code, but like we would if we were the general consumer.
And it's also the fact of like to this point, the legacy of Uncharted. They're gonna make more Uncharted films. PlayStation and Sony see this as
Uncharted
viable
the
thing.
movie, and it's like the game version of the movie, like Ratchet and Clank style.
Sure, I don't know if they'll go that route, but I think it'll be more that they will continue to. They want to make things in this world with this brand that they've, you know, sunk so much into. And again, this is the problem we come to every time with video games in some regard, right? Where it is art, but it is business, and so like it is going to be this thing that one of them is going to give one way or the other. Now it'll be interesting again, like. What I've always heard is that Naughty Dog kind of gets to do whatever the fuck they want because, of course, they keep putting out banger after banger. And so I do wonder if, you know, they have enough sway to be like, no one else touches Uncharted, or if they'd be enough sway to be like, we don't want to do Uncharted, so it doesn't happen, or if PlayStation would be like, listen, you can do whatever the fuck you want, but Evan, Neil, we're going to have somebody else doing Uncharted.
And that's where I stand. Like, I think that last part is the part that's going to happen, right? Because, like, PlayStation owns Uncharted. Naughty Dog doesn't own Uncharted, right? And as much as Uncharted is Naughty Dog's baby, if Naughty Dog doesn't want to make more Uncharted, which is like well within their right, and even that alone is more freedom than they'd probably get from many other publishers who are like, no, Eidos, you're gonna do this. No, Ubisoft, massive, you're gonna do this, right? Like the publishers usually, especially if you own the studios, usually have the say on like, hey, no, like we get the final say. You're gonna make this kind of game, or we're gonna have the conversation. But like usually you are being pushed to do some kind of project or some kind of thing. For Naughty Dog to have the power to come to PlayStation and go, hey, no, like we know Uncharted is like is a top 3 IP for you. We're not gonna make more Uncharted. That alone is like, that's great freedom. That said, like as PlayStation, I think you got to continue that somehow. Like and for I'm with you to a sense of I think Uncharted should take a break. I don't know if Uncharted should stop forever, but I would like if we didn't get another Uncharted for the next 4 years, right? Like
if we could come. If you could come back in PlayStation 6 and here's the brand launch title Uncharted, it's from Naughty Dog and it's about the characters that we have met towards the end of that game or whatever, 3 or 4, like then I'd be like, all right, cool, enough time has passed and we're doing this. But for the conversations and the legacy of Uncharted,
and that's where I would want. That's what I would want too. Is like take a break again. Like the Uncharted 4 came out in 2016. Uncharted Lost Legacy came out in 2017, right?
It's already been 5 years at this point.
5 years. Give it another like few years, and I think by that point, I am like, oh man, I could actually go for some more Uncharted now. Like it's been a while. Like we've had multiple Uncharted movies. Man, I could go for some Uncharted. Now I'm talking about like 2026, or even maybe it is next gen, right? Maybe it is PS6 where it is. Here's Uncharted New Legacy, and it is about like whatever the future of the franchise is. You're not playing as Nathan Drake. You're playing as other characters. Time has passed. All this stuff. I think that would be a great comeback for Uncharted, and I think at that point it doesn't need to be Naughty Dog. I think that presents a big challenge of like, can whatever studio, like if it's Fire Sprite or if it's Bend or if it's whoever, right? Can that studio live up to the greatest Naughty Dog? That answer, that's in the air. Likely no, but like I'd be down to see.
And see, but the problem there is, again, live chat, patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames. Eric Miller brings this up, which I would have gotten to eventually. But we saw what happened when another studio takes over games after Sony studios are done. Sly, Thieves in Time, and Jack, Lost Frontier. Both solid titles, but it was a step down and ended the franchises. And that's the thing is I feel like when you have an audience wanting for a Sly and wanting for a new Jack and Daxter and wanting for a new Uncharted, to go to the people who aren't the people. And again, this is an unfair comparison. Sony Bend and a Golden Abyss, I think, were unfairly compared to Naughty Dog. And granted, again, the Vita had a bunch of, gimmicky shit they shoved in there to do it or whatever, but they were unfairly compared. But this is the same thing here when you look at Zanzaro doing Sly, when you look at High Impact Games, right, doing Jack and Daxter Lost Frontier. Like, they're not the originators of it. Now, 100%, and I'm saying they're unfairly judged because of this, think about what we're talking about. In 5 years, 4 years, whatever, the team at Naughty Dog that would pick up and do a new Uncharted would not be the same team that did Uncharted 4, would not be the Uncharted 3 team, and so on and so forth. Like, it's not a fair comparison, but it's a real comparison. And there is the cachet and there is the legacy that comes with being Naughty Dog, or any studio for that matter, but being somebody like Naughty Dog and being that successful.
Legacy.
And dragging a forgotten legacy, Janet.
Right now we are talking about like a different studio picking it up, and you're also talking about like the future of Naughty Dog, and if like, you know, if it is 5 years from now, right, how many of the same people are working there. This job post, or sorry, not the job post, this LinkedIn bio from Christina Marie Drake McGrearty does say that like in her role as a recruiter, she's helping build future teams for not only new titles but for the legacy of Uncharted. Could it be a thing of, hey, no, not a new studio isn't taking this over. It's still going to be Naughty Dog, but we're hiring up. We're hiring 60 new people to work on like another franchise.
And there's also the argument of like, is the chair still the chair if you change all the parts? Like, how long is the PC the PC? I feel like we all know that teams change, but ultimately, outside of maybe like the really big changes of like sometimes people really like heavily weight like creative director and things like that, like, that's true of many long-running franchises. Like, I don't think that necessarily, like, that's always playing a factor, because like the people who worked on one thing probably didn't work on the next thing, even if like it still has the DNA and the feel. I mean, inherently, like, that's part of like what collaborating as a team is. It's about like being able to give your own take, but you're also kind of fulfilling a role within like an identity's brand, and you're like, you know, or a company's brand or a team's brand or whatever their kind of vision is. And then I think as far as like more Uncharted, I mean, this is so funny to me because as for my personal history with Uncharted, which if you've somehow not caught on in the last couple of years, I bought the trilogy for, I want to say for like the PS4 or whatever, and I've just kind of slowly been going through them with my brother, and you know, we kind of had like each game didn't quite hit for us, but everyone said the next one was going to be better, and that happened for 3 games, and I just ultimately, I think they're good games, but they just didn't age in the way that I think it was sold to me that they would, and I'm like, I'm just not that interested in this, or I don't see, this isn't that as saucy as you guys say, like, and maybe it was really saucy in 2007 or whenever it came out, which I can totally acknowledge, but I'm like, that doesn't make me enjoy them more. It just means I have respect for what that franchise does holistically, and I just am a Naughty Dog fan in general. But 4 is finally where I'm like, when I first started 4, I was like, I feel like this is still the same, y'all. It just looks better. And then I got deeper in, and now I'm like about halfway through, and I genuinely feel like, okay, this is, at least for now, I haven't done Lost Legacy yet, the pinnacle of the franchise. This also feels like what the franchise was striving for in its earlier iterations. Like, it is an evolution on every aspect that they go for in terms of combat and storytelling. And I have, you know, again, I have some gripes with like how the weapon gun sway feels and like certain elements of that, but on the whole, I'm like, yeah, this is a great adventure and a good story, and like even some of the puzzle stuff I think is a little bit better done, where you are still kind of just looking in the notebook, but it's not quite as like ham-fisted as it is in the earlier iterations. But for me, oh my god, if there's another, like, I have had a lot of Uncharted, and granted, I'm like kind of going through these chaotically in the last couple of years, but I don't know, it's hard to imagine. I think 4, they said what they've been trying to say clearer and louder and better than they ever have. And I think the fact that Blessing and other people think Lost Legacy is even better than that gives me optimism for what a continuation might look like. But at the same time, I personally struggle to imagine in what ways will they innovate in a way that feels like, oh, I didn't know I wanted, you know, Uncharted 5 or whatever the project's going to be, and they showed me that I didn't realize I wanted this thing.
I think that comes down to how do you, like, what makes Uncharted, and how do you take those elements and make something that feels fresh and make something that feels good, right? Because I think of any franchise that has gone a long time and asking the question of how do you make this still feel fresh, right? How do you make this still feel new and still feel good? And I look at, like, I think Rockstar has a problem sometimes where GTA for me is one of my favorite gaming franchises, and like I still remember like playing GTA San Andreas for the first time and going, wow, like I can't believe this is a thing, and like playing the other GTA games and being like, wow, like this open world is incredible, like I can't believe how far this is going. Playing GTA 5 and being like, wow, another 10 out of 10. But then like playing Red Dead Redemption 2 and being like, man, this is a Rockstar game, and like if only Rockstar could like learn from other developers. And like the more I even return to GTA Online, I'm like, man, GTA 6, whatever that's gonna be, has to like expand the horizons a bit more, right? Like I think it has to play around with like what that has to be, right? And when I think of Uncharted, it comes down on, you know, action, set pieces, you're searching for a treasure, you are climbing, and there's like banter and dialogue, right? And I think with those things, like if you create new characters, if you find new interesting story elements, like story doesn't necessarily become a thing that ages in terms of like the idea of a story, right? If you find a new story to tell, if you find an interesting story to tell, I think you can take a lot of those same mechanical elements and make them work in something new.
And so the one interesting thing we're talking about here that I think speaks to the exact topic, right? Of like, okay, well, another studio taking on or doing something like that, and how much, does the cachet or legacy of Naughty Dog matter? It's interesting to sit here and, Janet be like, Uncharted 4 is the pinnacle of the Uncharted games, right? And then Blessing to be like, well, Lost Legacy is my favorite one or whatever. I think it's important, right, for both of those games to call out the fact that they are the direct result of Amy Hennig's trilogy that was Uncharted 1, 2, and 3, right? And then remember, she breaks up with Naughty Dog, or Naughty Dog breaks up with her in the middle of Uncharted 4, right? Nathan Drake, Nolan North was making the rounds actually this week, and I have a report here from Eurogamer, which was followed by Victoria Kennedy. Nolan was over on Couch Soup, right? And the thing he calls out, right, was, quote, the biggest thing people probably remember is the biggest thing most people probably remember is we had shot Uncharted 4 with Amy Hennig for about 7 months. We were well into the game. She was dismissed from Naughty Dog, and they got rid of everything we did. They recast the whole thing. And he goes on to talk about a bunch of different stuff, right? Financially, it was nice, but that's the business. I was just glad they didn't scrap the whole thing and say, it's done, we're done. And so to the point we're making right now is the fact that, yes, Uncharted, any video game is bigger than one person who was there. But, Amy was the writer, right? The face of the writing team on Uncharted. And so to have her leave, and especially leave going into in the middle of the fourth game, you figure you have all this talent that's been hired because they loved Uncharted 1, 2, and 3. So they're able to come in and we want to do that, but we want to do it differently. And again, for Uncharted 4, being rebooted when it was already announced, it was already out into the world or whatever, you do wonder what an Uncharted game would look like from Naughty Dog, in quotes, that Naughty Dog or any Naughty Dog going forward, if they had from pre-pro the whole team and the whole vision, the whole thing they wanted all the way through. And so especially to look at Lost Legacy, right? That was Kurt. That was, a bunch of young faces. Sean, right? Sean S. Guy was on that as well at the head, and I could be wrong. You'll wrong me in the live chat on Patreon. It is that idea that, bringing fresh voices to an established thing works. It's just, I guess, for me, the idea that it's like I said at the top, it's similar to Last of Us Part 2, right? Where I was like, I don't need another Last of Us, but you make another Last of Us, I'm going to play another Last of Us.
Like same with Last of Us remake that we're talking about. That's rumored, right? Like we're going to be excited for that once they announce it.
And it's just that thing of like, I feel like so much is done. I'm doing the thing I normally do, which of course is that I don't make games because I'm a big dumb. I just like to play them. And it's that thing that I'm sitting here with you guys and saying the same thing I think a lot of you were saying too, of just like, I struggle to think of, all right, an Uncharted on PlayStation 5, an Uncharted on PlayStation 6. How does it not just look and feel like Uncharted? But again, I guess that's a very unfair thing to paint them into the corner of when Uncharted 4 felt different and Lost Legacy did feel different than what the Uncharted that had come before it would be.
I mean, I look at the idea of expanding Naughty Dog and having them work on a new Uncharted. Like, I do get unexcited about it if it is this is going to be our next project, just because I want to see new stuff from Naughty Dog so bad. Like, I think a new IP from Naughty Dog would do so much for, like, if they're able to apply all of what they've done with Uncharted and with Last of Us and create something that hits on that same level. Like, I think about what that would do for PlayStation, what that do for video games in general, and I get excited about it. That said, right, like, I also look at Naughty Dog's output, and it is, 2013 we get The Last of Us, right? Like, I think like the year after maybe is Last of Us Remastered for PS4. 2016 Uncharted.
Well, don't forget, Last of Us, then Last of Us Left Behind, then Last of Us.
Yeah, good point. And then like 2016 we get Uncharted 4, 2017 Lost Legacy, and then 2020 was Last of Us Part 2, right? And like that's pretty good output. Like in my head, I'm like, man, it always takes forever for Naughty Dog to put out games. That's not necessarily true, but what if you can ramp that up, right? What if you are getting a Naughty Dog game on PlayStation every 2 years, and the way that like Insomniac's output is like insane, right? Like, what if you're able to match that with Naughty Dog, who like puts out these games that people view as masterpieces that people go crazy for, and like, right now they're working on Last of Us Factions theoretically, and they're reportedly working on Last of Us Remake, and maybe they're working on a new IP. What if you can also get a new Uncharted in there as well? And,
you wanted to bring that in, right? Didn't you want to bring in the Last of Us Remake conversation?
Yeah, because like during the week there was another news story about Naughty Dog that went up, I think, the same day actually. I'm gonna pull also from Jordan Midler at Video Games Chronicle, and I wanted to ask the question, like, what's the over under on Last of Us Remake being 2022, because there was the report of a PlayStation animator hinting at a Last of Us Remake for 2022. The article reads like this: A PlayStation Studio visual arts animator has teased an unannounced first-party game that they suggest could release this year. In a series of tweets published over the last month, Robert Morrison, a veteran game animator who recently worked on God of War at Sony Santa Monica, claimed that PlayStation has some bangers coming out this year and alluded to an unannounced project he's been working on. The animator claims he is not working on the upcoming God of War sequel, Ragnarok. According to his LinkedIn profile, Morrison currently works for PlayStation Studios Visual Arts Group, the same studio that is understood to be working on the remake of The Last of Us for PlayStation 5, according to multiple reports. It's previously been reported that the unannounced title could release this year, and VGC has heard from our own sources that the remake is nearing completion. And this is like a thing that's been, I think, dusting up for a little bit now, right? Like we talked about this a year ago in terms of the Jason, I keep thinking it's Jason Schreier, but I'm also not sure. I'm pretty sure it was Bloomberg that reported about the visual arts group and like how everything got shuffled from Ben working on Uncharted at one point to like visual arts working on Uncharted remake to them finally settling on the Last of Us remake, then people leaving visual arts group, and then Naughty Dog taking over Last of Us remake. A lot of movement has happened, but this is kind of the latest thing, and this is like another LinkedIn thing, and so it's kind of loose. But it kind of all comes back to Naughty Dog for their output, right? Like they're pretty good about putting out games at a decent rate, and I could see the argument for, hey, we can get more out of this. Like Naughty Dog does quality, Naughty Dog has valuable IPs. We want all these IPs to live, but we also want to give them the freedom to be creative and do different things. And so I guess my two questions is like, one, do you believe that a Last of Us remake is coming 2022? And then also like, what do you want from the future of Naughty Dog?
I don't think it's coming because I just have I don't think anything is coming though, because there's a Ragnarok's coming. I'm like, no, nothing's coming. Like we're never going to see any games ever again. I just feel like there's been so many delays with so many things, and
you don't expect anything good. You can't be disappointed.
I would exactly. And yet here we are every week. But genuinely, like whenever, for almost anything, if it's like, do you think this is coming out? I always lean on no for that reason, which is kind of like makes this a bit of a boring take. It would not blow my mind if we saw it, and I think it'd be really awesome to have, like, in the fall or like around Halloween time. Like that would be so much fun, and I really hope that ends up happening, but I don't necessarily think it will. As far as what I want from Naughty Dog, I always want new stuff. I always wanted to see what else is out there, and I think, I definitely would take, if I had to have them iterate on something old, I would take Last of Us, just because I think they just totally knocked it out of the park with Last of Us 2. Again, that kind of does hit the, I don't know if I want to make this comparison because it's like a really high compliment. It's kind of like the Portal games to me, where like the first one's a 10, the other one's an 11. Like I feel that way about the Last of Us franchise. And I know, not everyone has that same opinion, but like, to that point too, it also kind of scares me, the idea of them continuing with Last of Us outside of just doing remakes, because I struggle to imagine, and again, this sounds like I'm just like, really like being over the top in love with Last of Us 2, but like I struggle to imagine something being better than that experience. Not that that was an experience without flaws. I do think that game has like 3 endings, and the third one kind of was like, hey, are we done yet? Like, we're really somewhere else? Like, how much time do I have left to play this game? But like, yeah, that would be my vote. I'd want something new, just to see, and maybe something a little bit less brooding. But I don't think they're gonna. I think they're moody and broody and violent and exciting at this point.
I don't know about that. That's one of my things about it, where I think like, okay, so Last of Us remake, I'm there with Janet, where it's like, I could see, the reason I would think you'd see Last of Us remake in 2020 sooner rather than later is that I think it'll be bundled with factions. I think that it'll be one of those kind of director's cut. I think you'll probably get Last of Us director's cut or Last of Us the super cut that'll have we talk about this all the time. Is it just going to be remake, or is it also going to be part 2 and factions all in one bundle, and then there'll be the million upgrade paths if you already have them, yada yada yada. I see they want to get those out. You've got to get those out. It makes sense, as Jordan writes here, that they've heard it's nearing completion. You would hope factions or whatever their multiplayer thing is also nearing completion, and that could be really cool and huge for them at the second half of the year. But in terms of Naughty Dog and like, what are they going to do, right? I don't think their next game is Uncharted, like their next new game, not a remake or something like that, right? And so I feel like at that point then, even though Neil's talked about like, oh yeah, I have an idea for a third game or whatever for Last of Us, blah, 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 you have to give your team a break. Like The Last of Us is depressing and oppressively depressing. And I've talked to people at Naughty Dog who talk about the shit they had to look at and study to figure out the things that are in that game. And like, you need to give them a reprieve from that, because even if you were like, all right, cool, the game's done, like start pre-pro on Last of Us Part 3, you'd have those same things in your head and what you're dealing with and working on. I feel like they all want to do something different, and so to the point too that we made earlier of like, these are valuable IP to PlayStation and Sony overall. How much more do you need to do to make them more valuable? Last of Us is an HBO show that I assume is going to be fucking awesome. I don't know if you ever look at any of the stuff that comes out of it. There was a screenshot from, or a photo. This isn't a spoiler, but a photo a couple days ago, somebody put up on either the Reddit or the Twitter or whatever, that was like a side-by-side comparison. Obviously, it was a faraway set photo where they were filming, but it was like almost frame for frame of like the blue and white truck smashed into a drugstore from the like where Joel and Ellie get ambushed or whatever. And you're like, oh my fucking God. You know what I mean? If you're going to do it that well, if you're going to have that much, and granted, Neil's working so much on this project and so close on it, obviously, that like, this is the first video game project I feel in forever that is a live action thing that's being treated with all the respect it deserves because the creators there, right? Anyways, it's going to be a huge success for HBO, I'm saying. And I think it's going to be a really, really great show. Uncharted, whether you liked it, hated it, loved it, whatever, it made a lot of money, and it clearly proved you're going to get another Uncharted and do that kind of thing. Like, if they've gotten these things up and running with video game fandom, and then they've taken off and they've become their own thing, do you need, as Naughty Dog, to keep making those games? Does PlayStation want you to keep doing that, or does PlayStation look at you and go, you know what? We thought it was a gamble, you guys doing The Last of Us, but you proved that people know who the fuck Naughty Dog is and they'll come for a Naughty Dog game. So why not make another IP? Why not go and invest in another world, another character, another genre, whatever you want it to be, that we can then turn into another movie, another TV show, another whatever? Because Uncharted, great, is proven. It could be an animated series on its own. That could find its own legs. You know, Last of Us is this thing. It could also be an ongoing comic book and probably will. Like, it'll be the tabletop and this, that, and the other, and t-shirts and whatever. Like, there's so many different ways for that IP to thrive that doesn't mean it needs to be another video game. Especially, but it all comes down, I think, to if Naughty Dog is motivated and wants to and has the story they want to tell.
Yeah, and I think I agree with both of you guys in terms of like what I want from the future of them. I think I'm like 99.5% that they have to be working on a new IP. Like, I think in terms of how much we've gotten out of Uncharted, I don't think they want to swing right back to Uncharted, but I do think they do want to swing back to something light. Like you mentioned, Greg, like Last of Us is dark, it's brooding, it's like, it's violent, and like I don't think you want to be, you know, it's graphic, right? I don't think you want to work on that like forever, right? And they're working on Last of Us Factions, and so like they're kind of going to continue to exist in that world. But I think in terms of narrative, Last of Us 2's narrative, even separated from the world they exist in The Last of Us Part 2, just the themes of revenge and violence and the back and forth, I think those ideas alone are very depressing and very dark, and that is such a stark contrast from Uncharted, which is very light, which is very, and I know like Nathan Drake is a mass murderer, but still, like, you know, the gunshots hit different in Uncharted versus The Last of Us, right? Like,
he's just running out of luck, you know?
Yeah,
also,
he's just running out of luck.
So mad when I told him that. I was like, did you know that like they say he's just running out of luck? He's like, get the fuck out of here. Like, you know, so now whenever he's dying, I'm like, careful, Edwin, like your luck's almost out.
Yeah, about to run out.
And in Uncharted, it's not like you kill an enemy and they're like, John, no. It's not, they're not saying their names in the way that like they do in The Last of Us. Last of Us Part 2 does every single thing to make you feel terrible while playing it. And I think Naughty Dog would, as a studio, I think it would be great for them to have that like swing around of like, cool, it's not Uncharted. Like, I've always pitched the Mission Impossible, like, you know, make it a secret agent, you're infiltrating, you're having all the gadgets kind of game. I think that would work so well for Naughty Dog. I could also see them doing like just a weird like a different setting in terms of like sci-fi, or like, I'm not a big fantasy person, but maybe I can see them doing fantasy. But like, I think like sci-fi or space or something along those lines would be really cool to see from Naughty Dog. I would love to see their take on something like that. But yeah, I would think for sure they got to be working on a new IP, and that's also what I'd want. That said, you know, I don't want more Uncharted. I'm sure they'll do more Uncharted, but I don't necessarily want it. What I do want is more Last of Us, and I think we're going to get that through Factions. But then Last of Us 3, I'm sure, is going to exist someday. I don't need it soon, but I do enjoy the world of The Last of Us so much, and I think so many people enjoy the world of The Last of Us so much, you know, especially compared to Uncharted. Uncharted, I think you're going into it for the characters and the story and the action, whereas Last of Us, like, I think about, like, oh yeah, like the Fireflies and I forget Abby's group's name, but like the wolves, yeah, and like their relationship with the other factions, and like the faction you find toward the end of the game, and like all these, there's such a bigger world in The Last of Us, and I think there's so much opportunity to do stuff with that world. I think it feels more deep, it feels more established, and like they do such a good job of, you know, finding ways to intrigue the audience regarding things in that world. And I think you're gonna get a lot of that in Last of Us Factions when/if that comes out. But I think with that, I would also like to see a Last of Us 3 someday, because I want more reasons to like have big like dynamic narratives in that world. But yeah, like, I think I named the 3 options, but I do want to some extent I do want all 3 of them. But yeah, Last of Us and a new IP at the same damn time. The next thing I want is a new IP.
Yeah, like same. Just to reiterate, like I would probably, if I had to pick like a magic wand scenario, I would go new IP. I would go, I love Jack and Daxter. I know they're not working on another Jack and Daxter, nor do I really want them to, though I'd also buy it because, like, I mean, like, obviously, like,
we're all hypocrites.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like, but people, it's funny. People always ask me, like, oh, you must really want a new one. I'm like, I feel fine with where it ended. And then I know it didn't really, like, it had like some other stuff going on.
Did you play
like,
Lost Frontier?
I didn't play Lost Frontier. I would like to, just for like, the culture. I played Daxter on PSP. That was awesome. I know that's not Naughty Dog, but it's in that world.
Yeah, for sure.
And I did try a little bit of Jack X, which is like a fine to below fine kart racer of that era. Like, I'm like, yeah, this is like a weird Mario Kart. I mean, it's better than that Horizon minigame where you fake drive, but it's not awesome or anything. But I would love like something that kind of marries a little bit of the tone, the slightly more mature tone with also some more like levity in the gameplay. And I think something like a third person action adventure platformer thing with like some other interesting mechanical shtick. Like how many years later, like, I don't know, what's it been, like 6 years since this game Recore came out that I absolutely wanted to love, and it to me just did not hit the mark. And I think so many of the ideas were there. Obviously it's a totally different team, but just to kind of give a comparison point, I think something with like that level of like playfulness, lore attempt, like interesting mechanical shtick. Like there were, and again, we talk about set pieces. Like I remember playing through that and there being those really cool platforming kind of parkour, like you're like sliding through like a zip line sequences. And I think about what if we could take the sort of lore and the characters and the writing that Naughty Dog has such a strength in and marry it with some interesting like fundamental gameplay in a more like platforming adventure setting and kind of make something that's in that T for teen kind of level, and what would that look like? I don't feel like they want to do that. I just don't get the vibe that's of interest to them. I think they, especially with like that article that went around where they talked about not making new Jack and Daxter, and they're like, oh yeah, we love like what Insomniac does with like their stuff, but like we've moved on. But I wonder if maybe just doing it in a new IP form, in a slightly different style, like with different kind of angles, there's a lot you can do with that platforming mechanic that's outside of like a traditional mascot experience. Like that's what I would love to see. Just someone who makes Recore correctly, even if it's not anybody. So yeah, I talk about
Recore sounds like a Rihanna
all the
game.
time, 100%. But yeah, anyway.
Obviously we're gonna get whatever Naughty Dog puts out. We're gonna be playing and be excited for it. But like,
what do you think the order is gonna be? And also, I have 2 questions. One of the questions I meant to ask like 30
clearly
minutes ago.
I'm winding down the segment.
Yeah,
but yes,
you're winding down the segment.
Motherfucker. Go.
But I really wanted to hear the answer to this question. I mentioned earlier that like Uncharted is a top 3 franchise for PlayStation. Am I wrong? Because like as I was saying it, I was like going through my head of the big PlayStation franchises, and I was like, God of War is bigger than Uncharted. Is that correct? Would you guys say so?
Yes.
What are we saying by bigger?
More valuable, like a more valuable IP.
Like when we're recommending, I think of this as like recommended games. Like,
no, I'm saying if PlayStation had to decide like what game to make next based on like the performance.
I mean, how is that different than recommended game? Okay, well, sure. Either way, I'd say God of War is. Like I would take God of War over Uncharted.
I would say God of War, yes, as well. I mean, taking into the legacy of the PlayStation 2 games, right, and how much beloved they were, and how many fans they made, and how many fans of just Kratos there are, and how iconic Kratos is.
Spider-Man, bigger IP than Uncharted. For
I would say their biggest.
Yeah, Spider-Man probably is their biggest, and then Last of Us. I think that's where like the argument is more so for me. I would say Last of Us in my head is bigger than Uncharted, but I don't know that to be a fact.
Yeah, because you bring in. I think right now.
I think it's more iconic. I know people are gonna get mad at that, but like, that's just how I feel.
I mean, I agree with that. Yeah.
I think like the thing we're doing is, of course, we're talking from our hardcore gaming perspective. I do think the Uncharted movie, even though whatever received however it was received, has more mind share with the public of Uncharted. If you were to say that, they might know what you're talking about, general public, than Last of Us. Last of Us is very. I mean, HBO show is going to drop and it'd be a different ball of wax, just like The Witcher. But I think for right now, that's where it is. But again, then we're also PlayStation.
Horizon's pretty big deal.
No, not big enough.
Wait, which one you said?
Horizon.
Horizon I was thinking about a little bit. Yeah, but I feel like Horizon hasn't been around long enough compared to Uncharted. To, like, get that
Exactly.
level.
And that's the whole thing about this. But that to The Last of Us Uncharted, which is a bigger IP for PlayStation, I think you're also talking about them betting on one of the other two if you were to have this conversation now of like, well, what's got more juice in it? Where are we going more? I think, Last of Us is going to do better on HBO than Uncharted did as in the movie theater in terms of reception and critical acclaim and yada, yada, yada. And I also think because it's a show, it's going to be talked about for longer. I think you're going to get more seasons of it than you're going to get sequels to Uncharted and things like that. I think it'll be a different story. But like, yeah, when you want to run through like the bigger IPs they have or what matters the most to them and yada, 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 you have to go to that PlayStation Studios opening they do before the movies, right? And all the characters that pop up there and who they are. And I think you're in such a weird place where I think we give Uncharted so much credit for being such a big deal because it is a huge deal to PlayStation fans, but I don't think Nate has broken through, even with the movie. And, these are arguing and we're slipping and sliding on stuff. I don't think Nate, the Nolan North, Nathan Drake has broken through where you could show that to a person and they would have some idea of who that is. Whereas I think Kratos, you'd have a better idea of that, right? Even Ratchet and Clank, because there's been so many games and those commercials were so good. Of course, and that's why this doesn't work.
Is this person a gamer or is this person my dad? I don't know. But my dad would know most characters. Like, he'd only know really Mario and like Pac-Man.
For sure. And that's why it gets it's a really...
Like, he was going to know Kratos anyway. He's like, who's this man?
Why does this man have no shirt on?
Yeah.
My second question, and this is a short answer. I don't want an explanation. All right, I just want the short answer. But Last of Us Factions not counting. What is the next project from Naughty Dog?
New IP.
The remake.
Oh fuck!
I forgot about the remake. No, Last of Us remake not counting too. What is the next new entry?
Why don't you just tell me what you want me to say?
New single player entry from Naughty Dog. That's not a remake nor Factions.
So I think new IP is gotta be on it. We have to have a new IP coming.
I mean, that's the only answer at that point.
A new IP. No, it could
well,
be
he's saying would there be on Last of Us Part 3 or would there be on Uncharted 5 or whatever?
Uncharted. Like, what is their next project?
Yeah, new IP.
Greg says new IP. Janice says new IP. I also say new IP.
But you also took away a lot of the options, so I think it's time to move on.
I took away the ones that we already know about for sure.
Doesn't mean that it's coming in that order, though. Anyway, it's fine. I understand.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to be mad,
one more thing.
Fucking Jesus Christ! If you want to be mad at him live, anyways, like I was saying that when I was originally trying to close out, I think like no matter what, we're gonna play and do it. And I think what gets me so excited would again, I'm gonna be excited for whatever Naughty Dog game is. I will be infinitely more excited when they're like, here is blank, and there's a new trailer and a new thing, and there's all this stuff to dissect. Man. Well, yeah, Blank Man, get David Wayne's back. Like a brand new, is it a game in space? Is it a game in the present day without the world being ended? Is it whatever the hell else? I can't wait to see what Naughty Dog does to wow us in terms of everything they've learned and put it into a new thing. That's what I say. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to have your say, like Eric Miller has so many times on the show from the live chat on patreon.com/kindoffunnygames. Of course, you can go to patreon.com/kindoffunnygames. Kick us a few bucks. You can have your questions read on the show. You could be watching us live. You could get the show ad free. You could get it with the exclusive post show we do each and every week. However, wherever you're consuming it right now isn't on patreon.com/kindoffunnygames. So here's a word from our sponsor.
This episode is brought to you by Credit Karma. Are you earning credit card rewards? Credit Karma can help you compare your reward options so you can find a card that fits your lifestyle, helping you earn miles or cash back for spending you're gonna do anyway. I've been using Credit Karma for years. It's such an easy way to just keep track of my credit score and make sure that everything is going fantastically with so many great features. Credit Karma uses your credit profile to show you offers that are tailored to your financial situation. Credit Karma partners with a wide range of card issuers so you can be sure that you're exploring all sorts of options. Comparing cards on Credit Karma is 100% free and it won't affect your credit score. And best of all, Credit Karma uses your credit data to show you your chances of approval before you even apply, helping you apply with more confidence. That is an awesome feature. Credit Karma, create your own karma. Ready to find the card for you? Head to Credit Karma and check out your personalized mix of offers today. Go to creditkarma.com or the Credit Karma app to find the card for you. That's creditkarma.com.
Blessing, it's time for This Week in PlayStation. I'm going to turn it over to you, but I want you to know I am 4 minutes away from being able to maybe buy a PlayStation 5 on the PlayStation Direct site. So there you go.
Why are you buying a PlayStation 5?
We are building a studio and need more PlayStation 5s for the studio. So I'm always on the lookout for these guys, and here we go. This could be my moment.
Greg, Janet, we talked about what Naughty Dog is working on next. I want to ask, what is Sucker Punch working on next? This last week, Ghost of Tsushima, it's been reported that Ghost of Tsushima has appeared to have received its final planned patch. This is Adam Bankhurst at IGN. After nearly 2 years, Sucker Punch has released what appears to be the final planned patch for Ghost of Tsushima, and has said it is, quote, not actively working on any additional patches at the moment, end quote. As reported by PlayStation Lifestyle, Sucker Punch shared the news on the notes for patch 2.18 of Ghost of Tsushima, indirectly teasing that they are full steam ahead on what is undoubtedly its next unannounced project. So again, I ask, what is Sucker Punch working on next?
What is this job, man? I think they're working on the next, iteration in Ghost of Tsushima, like Ghost of Tsushima 2, essentially. We talked about this a little bit on KFGD, you and I, because I think I was on the day this dropped. But yeah, I mean, I think it's become such, we talk about iconic franchises within PlayStation. I think Ghost, obviously it's very early to call it an iconic franchise, but I think it's had a really strong start. It's very critically acclaimed. It had the director's cut layer. It had that thing that you played, Blessing. What is it called? Legends. Okay. All these things have the kind of same name. Legends, Legacy, it's just something, right? They had freaking Jin Funko Pops. Like, this thing has legs.
There's a Ghost of Tsushima movie in the works. So another IP that PlayStation's capitalizing.
So, like, they're going hard on this. Like, and for good reason, right? Again, even though I'm not someone that was absolutely enamored by Ghost of Tsushima, I still think it's a very, like, solid I probably would rate it as a great game, even though I'm not just like obsessed with it. And I think they have like a really nice base in that they can come out with a sequel, and I could see the ways that it would be better than what they already had, even if you were already in love with what they had. Similar to, like, I think, Blessing, the comparison that you ended up making was like the jump from like Horizon 1 to 2, where it's like, whether or not you're in love with Horizon in general, it's pretty clear that 2 is a marked improvement in pretty much always,
like
almost completely
polish. Like, the world has more like dynamic stuff going on, like the activities.
There's a chest, more to do. Like, you don't have to drive if you don't want to, because that felt kind of weird.
Fast travel. You have to spend fast travel packs to fast travel. Now you can go to
but there's still anyway, I still have beef with that anyway. But yeah, so I think that's what's next for them.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's going to be a Ghost sequel, and I think that in this way we were talking about, Naughty Dog burned out, or I want to see something different from them, blah, blah, blah. I want to see them iterate, because I loved Ghost, and I obviously love Sucker Punch after Infamous, and even Sly, to that matter, but Infamous, obviously, what I was a huge fan of. And so I loved Ghost so much. It's one of those games that, like, I put on my list here, obviously, for my 3 recommended games. And it's, again, backlog season where I'm like, I never got all the trophies in Iki. Do I want to go back and, like, tool around the island because I had so much fun with it? I would love to see them come in, iterate. I think it's going to, I think that they learned so much. They got so much feedback. Clearly, it was loved. Again, it's got a movie. This has got a lot of juice in it that they can still go for. And, of course, there was the second Invasion, right? Wikipedia. Yeah, the first game was in the game was in 1274, right? But then there's a second Invasion in 1281 that I think you could go and do more stuff with, obviously. And then there, you'd assume you could close the story and be done with it, and they could have a point where they step off and go off and do something new.
Yeah, like, I think Ghost of Tsushima 2 is like, it's definitely happening, right? Especially with the way the first one ended, it felt like it left so much room for them to tell more story with those characters. And yeah, like, I think the thing that's interesting is, like, not if they're going to do Ghost of Tsushima. I think the more interesting thing is, like, how they do more Ghost of Tsushima, especially with Legends being a thing that Jana mentioned, where you go to their right now they have a job listing where they're looking for a multiplayer / network programmer, right? And they're, like, hiring for multiplayer as well. And this is a thing we've talked about in the past, but I could easily see them putting out Ghost of Tsushima 2 and then separately, not doing it in the way that Legends was part of Ghost of Tsushima a few months later as an update, it being a separate release that is free to play, or, like, however they decide to do it, and have it be okay, cool, there are 2 Ghost of Tsushima experiences now. Like, you have the single player experience that will continue Jin Sakai's story, and then we have the multiplayer experience that we're building up and making more beefy, turning into a online games as a service thing as part of PlayStation's games as a service push. I think both those things are probably in the works, and I think that's a very exciting feature for Sucker Punch, and so I'm looking forward to it. Next up, for This Week in PlayStation, will Amy Hennig's Star Wars game live up to the hype? I'm pulling from Michael McWhirter at Polygon, who writes an article titled, Amy Hennig has announced a new Star Wars game. A new Star Wars game is in development at Skydance New Media, the interactive studio founded in 2019 by game director Amy Hennig. Lucasfilm Games and Skydance announced Tuesday. It's a return to the Star Wars franchise for Hennig, who had previously worked with the franchise at EA's Visceral Games on an ambitious but ultimately canceled project set in a galaxy far, far away. Skydance New Media describes its untitled Star Wars project as a, quote, richly cinematic action-adventure game featuring an original story, but did not reveal specifics. No title, no release date, or platforms were announced. Hennig's untitled Star Wars game joins at least 5 others in development with Lucasfilm Games. Those projects include Quantic Dream's Star Wars Eclipse, an open-world Star Wars adventure from Ubisoft's Massive Entertainment, and 3 games from Respawn Entertainment, a sequel to Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, a new first-person shooter, and a strategy game co-developed with Bit Reactor, a studio founded by former XCOM developers. I go back and I ask the question, will Amy Hennig's Star Wars game live up to the hype?
Yes.
Greg says yes.
Sorry, I'm checking out, but with this PlayStation, I'm trying to make it.
Yeah. I don't know, which I know like is kind of egregious because I think Amy Hennig definitely has the pedigree to like knock it out of the park. But I think just, man, I'm good on the Star Wars. I think a little bit. There's like so much Star Wars stuff, and I haven't had a great experience in my Star Wars time in gaming. That being said, I'm always ready to be heard again. Like there's the God, what is that remake that's coming out? Was it Coda,
Knights
right?
of the Old Republic, yeah.
Yeah. Like I know people that love that game, so I'm definitely gonna try it when it's coming out. But like, yeah, I mean, I think the fact that it's an original story, like again, Star Wars, and for background too, I generally like Star Wars. I've watched all the movies. That was also sometimes mixed at times, but I definitely had an era where I was like really heavy into Star Wars, like around like Force Awakens, where like I watched that movie so many times, and you know this, that, and the other. But I don't know. I'm just not someone that is going to be super excited about this being anyone's project. So I don't know. I have a little bit of hesitancy, I think, just from that.
I'm kind of in like the opposite place in terms of my history as a Star Wars video game person, where like I tend to enjoy Star Wars video games more than even like the movies or the TV shows. Like I've never really fallen in love with Star Wars in terms of the movies, and even like I watch Mandalorian and like the other Star Wars stuff, and I'm always like, I don't know, man. Like at the end of the day, it just comes down as boring to me. Like I find it so hard for me to connect with that world. But then like some of my favorite games on like the PS2 were Star Wars games, right? Like I remember playing Star Wars Battlefront 2 and going crazy for it. I remember my first time playing Star Wars Battlefront. It was actually it was a demo at my best friend's house at the time. He had it on Xbox, and like we would play Star Wars Battlefront, and I'd be like, yo, this is insane. Like we gotta kill 150 people to win the thing. We gotta capture the points. Like it was one of my early first person shooter like arena experiences like that, and like that blew me away, let alone playing like Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order and other Star Wars games that came out over the years. I think I've talked about Star Wars Demolition before on KindaFunny, and I'm like, yeah, dude, so even Star Wars Demolition, which was basically a Star Wars Twisted Metal game for PS1, like I remember having fun with, and I have like countless of those for Star Wars. I like that there's so many Star Wars games. Like usually I would be like, oh man, oversaturation, like it feels like it's too much. But Star Wars for me has always felt, in terms of video games, it's always felt like a, weirdly enough, like its own video game franchise, even though it's a movie franchise, right? When you have so many and so many different genres, so many different takes on it, it kind of has its own presence. Like we're just coming off of Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga as well, and so like
all the new records, most successful Lego game.
Yeah, and like it seems like Star Wars is due for a renaissance, especially being this thing of not having to be beholden to EA and being able to spread out among different developers and like have different people give their own takes on Star Wars. I think that's going to do so much for it in the way that we've seen with Marvel. You have the Spider-Man game, and then you have Guardians, and you have other Marvel games that are shining brightly, right? I think you can have that same thing for Star Wars and make it work. I will say that the idea of an Amy Hennig Star Wars game doesn't excite me anymore. Like I think the idea of it being like an Uncharted style action adventure, like that excites me. I look back before this podcast at like the trailer for Project Ragtag that we saw at that EA E3 conference, and like just for the 7 seconds we saw of that, I was like, damn, all right, yeah, I would be down for this game. But like I went back and I looked on Wikipedia for like projects that Amy Hennig has worked on that have come out, and like, you know, she's writing on Forspoken. Before that, 2015, she wrote on Battlefield Hardline, and then before that, you have the Uncharted games that she worked on, and that was from like 2007 to 2011. I feel like we've not seen much from her for so long that like that alone doesn't get me excited for it. But I do get excited for like the genre.
This could be her comeback moment.
See, that's my thing coming in.
Like, Oh, go for
Sorry,
it.
coming back to the
calling a
conversation.
comeback.
I can confirm.
For you.
I can
tears,
confirm.
come suck us a
Me and Roger Pocorni were able to procure PlayStation 5s. The studio now will have enough PlayStation 5s, so everything can be fine. We can play
Oh,
games there and not have to worry about it.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So coming back into it, that's what excites me about it, is the fact that Amy has been on ice for so long, right? Uncharted 4, there's the nasty breakup with Naughty Dog, and then okay, I'm gonna go over here and work on Visceral, work on Ragtag. You bring up Battlefield
Hardline.
Battlefield Hardline. Thanks so much. And I'm sure that was like, that wasn't her game, right? That was a game with Steve Papusa and all them working on it. I'm sure she just, contributed a little bit when she got there and did a line or whatever in between other stuff. And the same thing for Forspoken, which I don't really know. I shouldn't say that, but I know Gary did a lot, not a lot. I don't even know how much Gary did. Gary wrote it or whatever, worked on it, writing it. I'm not sure 100%. And that wasn't her thing. Like, I think the fact that she went into, they brought her into Skydance Media. They gave her this big old highfalutin title. She's been able to work on stuff and build stuff over there and work on a team and yada, yada, yada. I think now that to come in and be like, all right, cool. Like, what's interesting enough is like, you figure she had to go back to Disney and Star Wars, right? And be like, hey, we want to make this game. Here's our pitch, yada, yada. And you have to imagine that Disney and Star Wars, whether it's the same people or not, are they going like, this is awesome. We're so glad you get to do this again. That EA fucked this up, right? That they're clearly like, that was where the friction was. It's not salt and earth for EA or for Star Wars and Disney. It's like, there was a breakup there for Visceral that ended badly too for them. Now you get to go do it. I'm excited to see what this is. I'm excited for Amy to make a fucking game again. Like, I love Amy games. And so like, cause you can go back, you're talking about obviously Uncharted, you go back from there, like what Legacy of Kain and stuff, right? Like, Amy's made bangers that are like, granted, the games have changed and times have changed and narratives have changed, but this is probably outside of Fallen Order 2, because I loved that game so fucking much, the original. Like, this would be my number one Star Wars like anticipated video game out of all of them there. But I'm also not Mr. Star Wars. Like, I'm not going to play every Star Wars game. I love Lego games, and I played Lego Star Wars on the stream or whatever, but like, I'm not when, especially for how much is in that game. I was like, I am not a Star Wars fan enough to go back and relive these 9 movies and get a platinum in it or whatever. And so like, I'm way more excited to see what Amy's narrative Star Wars game would be and where that's going to set us and what's going to happen.
Yeah. I hear you there. I think the thing that does worry me is like you mentioned the amount of time that has passed, right? And like Uncharted 1 through 3, again, those were like 2007 up until 2011, I think 2011. And like, for those, I'm in terms of like how I view those games, I'm actually in a similar place as Janet, where I played Uncharted 1 through 3 after the fact, played them, and I was like, oh, these are fine. Yeah, I like certain set pieces, right? And I'll never forget like the train scene in 2 and like the airplane scene in 3, right? Like, I think those games had some incredible moments, but in terms of writing, I was never like, oh, this is the cream of the crop. This is something I'm gonna remember forever. Even though I guess I probably will remember Uncharted games forever, just because like they're cemented in my mind now. But like, I guess like I'm curious to see how she hits in 2022, right? Like, does she still not does she stand the test of time, because that feels like a weird like way to put it, but I guess more so like it like
she still have the sauce.
Does she still have the sauce, right? Like, were her talents like peak in 2009 when it was the PS3 era and we did have certain standards for video game narrative?
In the bottle kind of thing?
Was it lightning in the bottle, right? Like, I feel like video game narratives have come so far also, and like, does that still, when she puts out a game in 2022 or whenever this game comes out, is that still gonna feel fresh and feel like something that belongs in 2024? And like that, and it's weird for me to judge, because again, like, she's been working. It's not like she's been like absent. It's just that her games haven't come out. But I'm curious to see. Next up for this week in PlayStation, I want to talk about Crazy Taxi and Jet Set Radio, because this last week.
Crazy Taxi.
Yeah. Takashi Mochizuki over at Bloomberg put out an article about how Crazy Taxi and Jet Set Radio are coming back. Sega is developing big budget reboots of its Dreamcast games, Crazy Taxi and Jet Set Radio, as it taps its back catalog in search of global hits like Epic Games Inc.'s Fortnite, according to people familiar with its plans. The 2 titles would be the first entries in Sega's Super Game Initiative, which the company announced a year ago as an effort to develop recurring revenue sources and build online communities around its software portfolio. Fortnite has become the role model for such games. Free to play, it's available across platforms, hosts large multiplayer contests, and includes extras like vehicles, construction, and social events on top of the usual combat, spurring player purchases of in-game items. I think this is very fascinating. Last last year when this was first reported about like Sega working on a super game initiative. I remember being on a KFGD. It was me and Tim, and we were talking about like what is Sega's super game gonna be? Like, first of all, that sounds ridiculous. Also, like, it must be like a big Destiny like MMORPG, or it must be like a Fortnite style battle royale. Like, what could their super game be? And to get, and to get it announced as Crazy Taxi and Jet Set Radio, I think is the funniest outcome to the story. But for you guys, like, to bring this into PS Love You, like, I want to hear your pitch. Like, what do you guys think these new games will be? Because if they're going to be a super game, like, or super games, I don't imagine that this is going to be like the Crazy Taxi
taxis get dropped onto an island.
Here's the thing.
Listening?
We did this on Kind of Funny Games Daily, and it was me and Witta, and me and Witta are both big Crazy Taxi fans, so we started bullshitting around. That was one of the jokes that came up. But the more you think about that idea, and not like the island, and not necessarily 100, the more it does get interesting. Because how do you make a Crazy Taxi that is free to play, that you can, like, they want to make Fortnite, but they want to make Fortnite with their IPs, is what we know from what we've heard, right? So it's like, okay, then it would need to be, that you are taking your taxi into a metropolis shared by other people, and you are racing around, and there's your counters clock is ticking down, their counters are clicking down. There's only X amount of high XP or high time bonus people and hard things there. There's the easy ones, to keep a little bit of time on your clock. There's the medium ones, there's the super, but you're all competing for these fares. So it is that idea that, you're like, I think it could be interesting to have it click down and go.
To Forza Horizon 5 and like
their battle royale for that game.
Little battle royale where you could do like your separate like one-on-one races in that to like knock other people out and stuff like that. Where you're picking up like one person at a location, and the other driver's picking up like another person, and it's like all about like who delivers their person the fastest and stuff like that. You could do stuff like that. There are ways to do it. I just why Crazy Taxi? Why this other game?
Crazy Taxi is fucking awesome.
I think bringing back both these titles, I think, is wonderful. I think it's excellent.
I think it's a bad
branding them
decision.
as their super games initiative, I think that's weird, and I don't know what is going through their heads. But like, I mean, Crazy Taxi has a fan base. Like Crazy Taxi, I think, should come back. Like, people like,
it's
the same thing with Jet Set Radio.
There's me. There's Greg. There's too many people to count. Like, honestly.
Yeah,
The thing about
I
it is
love
that
Jet Set.
you wonder if it's Sega and seeing, and like, they know that Crazy Taxi has nostalgia. They know people love Crazy Taxi. The question is, do people love Crazy Taxi enough in 2022 to sit there and play the game I just pitched?
Nope.
It depends on if they have the music for it.
Well, and see, that's the whole thing. When this came up, Gary's like, I tried to play the re-release, and they didn't have the Offspring yet. And like, I'm like, well, Gary, you're just asking for a remake of the original game, and that is not at all what they're pitching. They're not at all pitching that it's going to be just Crazy Taxi again. There's like very much it's going to be the super game version of that with all this free monetization shit and stuff. I'm like,
it's a nostalgia play inherently, so you need to like nostalgia it up a little bit. And I think part of that is like, when I think of Crazy Taxi, I do also think of of Offspring. I like that's.
But like, so here's where it gets really weird. And all right, cool, let's monetize this like Fortnite. And it's like, all right, cool. So you're making cars,
the taxi's blue now,
taxi drivers. And then would you be putting out songs? Like, is that something you put out that you're purchasing from the store, that you're getting the Offspring pack that you could play and like,
what if you're picking up celebrities? You pull up and it's The Rock.
Like, I picked up Ninja.
Come on in. Let me deliver you.
Sure.
Yeah. I think the idea of bringing them back is so good. Yeah, I don't know how they make this game a super game in terms of like what they want the reception of it to be. I don't think there's a way to monetize a Crazy Taxi in a way that makes it a Fortnite, which I think makes this fascinating of what is going through their heads. Because like, I can't imagine they're thinking about it the way we're thinking about it, where even though their pitch sounds like that, right? Even though they reference Fortnite and they reference these other things, they must be thinking about it in a sense of, let's put out a Crazy Taxi game that comes out on, I don't know, comes out on mobile, PC, and console platforms, that has cross progression, that has like ongoing elements that could be multiplayer, could not be multiplayer, but it is like an ever ongoing, we're busting out new content for this thing so it can make money indefinitely. I think there are ways to do that could be interesting, but also that will you suck out the soul from Crazy Taxi in that case, right? Like,
I mean, for sure, because what would you buy in Crazy Taxi? That's what I can't wrap my head around.
Like what your driver looks like, customizing your driver. I do think the songs could be a thing.
I think your driver.
Yeah, you see them when you like start in the menu thing. Like, there's a bunch of stuff that I don't see, or like I still customize my character in a first-person game a bunch. Like, even though I don't see them almost ever, if ever. Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think that this is gonna like knock it out of the park. I think too, like inherently trying to chase like Fortnite is like kind of setting yourself up for failure. However, that can still be a success in its own way. Like, I don't think this is. I would be pretty shocked if we lived in a world where Crazy Taxi was the new Fortnite. Like, that'd be kind of weird.
What a world to live in, though. Can you imagine?
Right? God,
I'm
I
sure
fucking
Dr.
love that.
Strange
My time
sees
has
that
come.
somewhere, you know? Like, but I don't
like,
think that's the world we live in.
Oh, well, I was gonna make a comparison. I'm gonna make the comparison, and you're gonna see where I'm going with this, right? Where like I feel like this is the same as Nintendo going, oh man, we need our own PUBG, and then like busting out Tetris, which they did do.
You can bring it up because I was gonna mention that I still don't think this is gonna pop off like crazy, but it could still be good even though it's weird, because again, like to your point, the Tetris 99 stuff, Pac-Man 99, like that shit was hot. Like even the Mario 99, it was a little bit weirder. I don't think it translated as well.
It was cool though.
It was cooler than I think any of us thought it would be. I think everyone kind of thought this sounds a little bit stupid, and it's like, and it could just be stupid enough to work, because that's a little bit, to me, the Crazy Taxi cachet is the arcade fun of it all. Like, I like Crazy Taxi because it's fun to drive around in familiar locations, or at least locations that are kind of like trying to pull on familiar, you know, iconography for a certain vibe with the music. And then also like there's, you know, a little bit of like chaos to it, and like, you know, extra ramps and like things that kind of make it hectic. Like, I think there could be versions of that have like multiplayer elements that are cool. I think too, in terms of multiplayer modes, besides like what y'all already brought up, which is basically like a battle royale style, like Forza Horizon 5 inspired thing. I also wonder, like, what are ways that they could take that core mechanic of picking up and dropping off and kind of try to translate it into other types of modes. And I don't know what that exactly looks like, but I kind of think towards like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, where historically for me in Mario Kart, I've never been a big fan of the stuff outside of the Grand Prix, but I think in at least Deluxe, which granted, I'm sure it has old modes from other things, like stuff like the Cops and Robbers thing does actually work really well and is super fun. And I'm genuinely like constantly impressed when I go back to play those additional modes that I don't admittedly spend as much time with, how much fun there is to be had in something that is, you know, distinctly different from what I think you think of when you think of like what a Mario Kart experience is, and that's kind of where I could see this going.
Yeah, you're thinking about a crazier taxi.
To do that, yes.
Oh, God, you know they'll call it that too.
And I was listening to Giant Bomb, I think yesterday, and they were talking about this story, and they were kind of speculating on like, do they literally mean something that has the same structure of Fortnite, or are they really just using Fortnite as a kind of catch-all term for, we want this super game to be super successful, and like, do we really like? Yeah. That's the other side of it.
Do they want it to be big too?
Yeah,
you know
and that's and that's what I'm talking about, right? Like that's why I'm like, is it? I think when you break down what they mean when they say super game, and like when they make the Fortnite comparison, I think it is we want this to be super successful, and we want it to be ongoing. We want it to make money for a long time, which is like which makes this conversation very interesting, because I think what Jane is talking about could very well like work, right? Like I think it could be, hey, what is the very core gameplay mechanic of Crazy Taxi? It's picking up and it's dropping off and it's driving. How can we translate that to a bunch of different modes that feels fun, that like can that many people can jump into and go crazy with it, right? Like I could see something there. I think for me, like I look at this news story, and the thing that fascinates me more is Jet Set Radio, because like I like Crazy Taxi. I fucking love Jet Set Radio, and Jet Set Radio is one that like, you know, no matter what version you bring back Jet Set Radio in, I'm down for it. Bring it back. I know the monkey paw is curling as I like go through this news story, but it is what it is. If this is the only way to bring back Jet Set Radio, so be it. I can't imagine what that game is going to be, because like Jet Set Radio, like it is like a single player, even though they have multiplayer in future, right? But like it is a kind of a platformer, kind of like you're just going around areas, spray tagging shit, doing tricks. Like it is an extreme sports game. I don't know if you bring that back and go like, okay, cool. Do we make this a Trackmania style thing where you're racing other people and going through these tracks? Do we make it like Riders Republic, where it takes place in this big open world and you're going into different events and doing like these cool extreme sports matches? Like, do we make it like the OG Jet Set Radio feature or Jet Jet Grind Radio? Like, this isn't a franchise that I think is naturally translates to the quote unquote Fortnite style super game. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's ape shit. Like the shit, like it blows my mind, but also I'm kind of excited for whatever it ends up being. I think that's where I'm at with it, even though I know they're gonna like milk Jet Set for all it's worth.
to just give a quick thing, like, remember, we're so caught up in the recent reports. This is how it originally went. I'm at hypebeast.com from November 2021. Sega and Microsoft are teaming up to create a next generation of global games. Sega and Microsoft have plans to partner in creating a variety of global games from Microsoft's Azure cloud platform. The new partnership would feature a next generation game development environment and allow Sega to proceed with its Super Game initiative that will develop new titles focusing on global, online, community, and IP utilization sectors. Additionally, the partnership enhances development processes while also bringing high quality experiences to the Azure cloud platform. So again, yeah, okay, this doesn't mention Fortnite and the monetization and trying to be that big, but it does talk about online. It does talk about global. It does talk about cloud. It does talk about playing that. And again, Crazy Taxi, of course, is rooted in the arcade, which was chasing high scores and doing stuff like that. So maybe it isn't 100 taxis drop on a thing. It is just a new Crazy Taxi. But if it is just a new Crazy Taxi chasing each other's scores and times, where's the revitalization Fortnite and microtransactions you're going to see to make it actually make Sega money as they close arcades in Japan?
We'll have to wait and see.
We will.
To close out this week in PlayStation, this is like breaking. This is one I was originally not going to include, but it's exciting for me, and I'm sure, and I know for Greg, maybe for Janet. We're getting, maybe for Barrett, we're getting more Tales from the Borderlands. Gearbox official tweeted this out during the show. New adventure, new characters, new tales, and all new Tales from the Borderlands is coming in 2022 from Gearbox and 2K. Get hyped, everybody.
It's another one of those, like, yeah, more Tales from the Borderlands, and it's very much, you know, Tommy Boy, right? The name's on the box, like, all right, like, this isn't the Telltale that made this game are long gone. And granted, you know, obviously Gearbox is the Borderlands people, or are the Borderlands people, but like, Telltale made Tales from the Borderlands like what that game was. And so, like, who are you going to have from that team? Where are you going to go? It's the same thing with Wolf Among Us Season 2, which granted is using a bunch of ex-Telltale devs, but I'm excited for more Tales. I love Tales from the Borderlands. I've told that story a million times of having a bad day, not being able to find a bunch of things, and finally turning that on and laughing within 5 minutes and being in the whole way. And Loader Bot and all the performances, and Ashley and Troy. And then it also gets into it of like, cool, so are you bringing Reese back to it? And then is Troy going to make up and play that character? And like, is Laura back? Who knows? It's exciting. It's this year, they say, which I was unexpected when you read it. I'm stoked for that. What do we have here? You know,
yeah, from Brendan
Graver, who I kind of see like the general consensus being on Twitter of, I'd love to be excited by this news with how much I love the original Tales from the Borderlands, but without Telltale's writers, I'm wondering if they can recapture that magic. Borderlands 3's biggest letdown was how they handled the Tales characters. So I feel like, you were saying.
I mean, I feel that.
Names on the box.
But like, I think the bummer is like, it's either this way or no way, right?
Yeah.
Because like Telltale isn't around anymore, right? And I don't think those folks in any other sense would be able to come back and work on the game. And so like, I'm at least down to see the shot at it, right? Like, I definitely have like less faith in it than I would have if it was like a Telltale thing, but also Telltale was already in a weird place in terms of their projects and how shaky they were. That said, like, Tales from Borderlands for me is probably my favorite Borderlands game. At least it's the most I've enjoyed a Borderlands story. And it hit so well for me that immediately I picked up Borderlands 2 and started playing more of it. Like, that's how good it was, where I was like, I want more from this universe now. And like, I couldn't get that same fix from anywhere except from Tales from the Borderlands, which is funny enough. And so, yeah, like, looking forward to it, but yeah, we'll see how it hits. Now it's time for PlayStation picks. Let's start off with the drop. Let's start off with the drop from this week. This week we got Scourgebringer coming to PS5. Scourge. PS5 Monday, April 18th. Lego Builder's Journey came to PS5 and PS4 Tuesday, April 19th.
Chernobyl. Janet, this is one Andy never shut up about. And I was like, yeah, but I don't know if I'm ever going to play it. And now I have it on my PlayStation, of course. I get the trophies, all that stuff. This is a short one, but it's a touching one. Is that right?
Yeah, admittedly, I still have not finished it. It's one of the classic. Again, if it's not for work, we just like let that thing burn for a while. But but now I feel like I've been wanting to get back to it for a while on Apple Arcade. And yeah, the thing that really stands out to me a little bit more so than the story, and I haven't finished the story. You know, it's about like a kid and a parent-child kind of situation, and like growing up.
Andy said it would make me cry back in the day, and now it'll make me super cry because I have a son.
Yeah, I can't speak to a lot of that, but I have not cried yet, but I'm not done with it yet.
You're also hard as a rock.
Yes, that's also there. Just no emotions, deadpan. But one thing that really stands out to me is just how beautiful looking this game is, and how good like the sound design, the detailing is, like the way like it feels to lay. And I think with with the freaking haptic feedback and stuff, like the way it feels to lay down like the bricks, and like it's just, there's so much beauty and intrigue in it, and it kind of reminds me of if you've liked like Captain Toad games like that, it kind of has similar stylings of like laying down the stuff, and there's like light puzzle solving in it. I will say my only gripe is, in my opinion, or like in my experience, sometimes the puzzles were like a little bit, if you don't know what to do, there's not really a lot of like leeway in figuring that out. So I did have to consult a guide on at least like one or two of them so far. But I love this, super underrated, and I'm really glad that it's coming to PlayStation, because I think it's gonna, give it a chance to like get more eyes on it, because it's such a fantastic game.
Hell yeah.
Sorry,
Blessing, back to it.
Chernobylite, that's coming to PS5 on Thursday, April 21st. And then Samurai Bringer came to PS4 on Thursday, April 21st. This is one that caught my eye. I saw the name Samurai Bringer. I was like, oh, I never heard of that. Let me check that out to see if it belongs on the drop. And then when I read when I read the description of the game and then I watched the trailer, I was like, holy shit. And so Samurai Bringer is a roguelite action game with levels which change with every playthrough, where you cut down hordes of samurais and demons to collect combat techniques and polish your fighting style in order to defeat Yamata no Orochi, the 8-headed dragon of Japanese mythology. As I look through the gameplay, I'm like, dude, roguelite, I'm in. The more I watched, the more I was like, yo, this looks exactly like Brave Fencer Musashi, which is a game that came out on PS1 that was developed by, I want to say Square? Yeah, it was Square. And that's a game that like is kind of not underrated, maybe underrated, but like it's one that's like under the radar, that not as many people like talk about, not as many people have played, but like
This looks dope.
Yeah, it looks kind of like this, right? Like this top down, like you're running around. You have like it's kind of Zelda-ish, right? Like chopping, getting into action, getting into combat. This is a roguelite, and so you are like collecting techniques. You are leveling up as you're going, and then once you die, like you lose all your progress and start over again in that arcade style. I saw this. I was surprised by it. I was like, yo, this looks dope as hell. It has more of a pixel art style to it, but it does have like the 3D model thing going on, like a PS1 game. And so like if this is one that if you're somebody that like Brave Fencer Musashi, or if you like roguelites, or like what's the other one? I think it's like 3D Dot Heroes.
3D Dot Game Heroes. 3D Dot Game Heroes.
Yeah, 3D Dot Game Heroes. Like I think this might speak to you.
All right then.
All right, y'all. What'd you guys pick to play on PlayStation this week?
I want to. Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
Why? What did you? What breaking new? What brand new game did you decide to play on PlayStation this week, Janet Garcia?
I'm playing a game that I really want to be ready to talk about this topic, so I decided to continue my Uncharted 4 playthrough, which is really impressive because I think I started that before the news dropped that we would have in the show. But
wow.
I'm back to Uncharted 4. Don't call it a comeback. Been here for almost a year of playing this game. And yeah, I'm playing it with my brother. Y'all know how it is. I've been telling this story for a while, and I will keep telling it until it's done. And you better hope they don't make more, because then I'll just have new versions of this same old story. But also the same could be said about the entire franchise. Anyway, that being said, I am now halfway through. I got to the point of this really cool set piece that happens a bit after like the clock tower. I think it's in the same chapter. It's funny because like the reveal on screen, like is this from the trailer or like one of the trailers of this? Like what are we looking at right here? Yeah, it's funny because I'm glad I got like through, because I didn't get to see like Elena like confront Nathan until like my last playthrough. Not that that's like that shocking. I feel like you can kind of see that obviously there's going to be something with that conflict. But yeah, this is what we're seeing like right now. Like I'm in that exact section, and having like gone through that chase sequence, it was just so cool and so fun. And I'm really glad that I got to like play it specifically as well, because I'm doing like this co-op style with my brother where we're like passing the controller back and forth and like talking through the stuff and like working on things together. And like we were going through part of that set piece, and I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna take this over, because he kind of had died a couple times, and I'm like, okay, let me try to like figure this out and go through it. And then it just kept rolling, and it was so smooth, and like I did this crazy jump to a car without like seeing anything. I thought for sure I'd die, and then like the car pulled up. Like I just think it was so like well integrated and dramatic, and it went on for so long, and it was just such like an exciting moment with like these different little compartments throughout. And I think it also did something that I really like in games where we have these, and I felt this a lot playing Horizon Forbidden West, where there's like this very dramatic or intense gameplay moment followed by like a hard-hitting narrative moment. And I think those combinations are like when those styles of games are at their best. So that part's cool. Now I'm back on looking at islands, which I'm like, admittedly, this feels like the same structure is the thing I just did, where it's like I went around and there were like different, I guess, ruins that I was like checking out, and I'm like, well, now we're like in a boat and there's different islands we're checking on, and I'm like, okay, well, it's fine, I guess. Like, I get general construction's gonna repeat, but yeah, we'll see how things end up going, and I'm guessing that Elena probably doesn't leave Nathan Drake in this game, but I would really love to see that. But I can dream. So
really quick, and maybe wait for it. Wait to watch this after you beat the game in like 8 months.
Okay.
I think it was IGN did a really cool interview. It might have been with Dorno interviewing like one of the level designers about how that whole chase throughout like the city, and then like going on that like long thing, jumping in between cars and stuff, like how that was designed, and in like level design and even narrative design, with that like hard hitting emotional moment right after. It's a really cool piece on IGN that I think they released that like sometime last year. You should check it out. But maybe wait, because I forget if they spoil anything at the end.
Right.
Of the year.
But yeah, that's where I'm at. So we'll see where things go. I'm still only halfway through the game, and I don't know how long it's going to take. And then admittedly, it was funny because the last run I did with my brother.
You're only halfway through the game. Is that true?
Chapter wise, I am. I don't know if y'all are like, oh, secretly some of the chapters are like 10 minutes or something, but I'm on like chapter 12 or 13, and there's like 24 or something.
Where she's about to get to, you're there for a while, Bless. You got to remember.
Okay.
That.
In that case, I'll say you've done all the best stuff in the game, Janet. If you don't like it here, then just put it down.
Oh, Bless. Fuck you, dude.
Damn,
That's where I'm at. Yeah,
really?
dude.
Oh,
Actually, you did the clock
still...
tower, you did the chase. Yeah, no, you did all the best shit.
No.
The funny thing about the clock tower too is I totally fucked up that sequence. So like, what is really cool to a lot of people is just my memory of like dying horrifically.
Getting through it
we'll see how.
awkwardly.
Yeah, we'll see how things go, because it's funny because I finally got time to play with my brother. He's like super busy, so like I'm like literally anytime. Like we just need to get a couple hours are gonna go a long way. We can get through this game together. And we played, and like I did the that sequence, and then I'm like, okay, I guess I'll like go on the boat too and do the other stuff. And then like I'm like, okay, it's your turn here. You play for a bit. But then like he was really struggling with this one area again, and I'm like, all right, I'll do this too. And then we got to like a ruin, and I'm like, okay, here, it's your turn again. And he's like, well, I'm honestly, I'm not good at these puzzles. And I'm like, God damn it! When I'm playing this whole thing by myself. And then he did say, he was like, I promise for the next time we sit down together, I will be a better player than I was in this last sequence. Because I'm like, I'm really just playing and you're watching me, which is still like kind of fun, but I'm like, it's not really and I think finished Norco that same night, where I played like 6 hours of that game. And I'm like, I just came off of that. I'm like, all right, time to queue up the PlayStation 5, like playing more Uncharted. And yeah, it's been a lot, but we're back playing it again.
To push back
almost a year later.
on Bless's sentiment, I think everything from the moment Elena catches up with Nate, going throughout the rest of that game, is some of the best narrative stuff in the entire series. There is one firefight near the very end of that game that is very reminiscent of like Uncharted 2, where it just keeps going, and you're like, ugh. But that is the only part of that, the second half of that game, that I think is weak. Everything else is fucking sick as hell.
Sick as hell, Janet.
Know.
Bless. My PlayStation pick of the week is a sketchbook about her son. I forget, was it on this show or was it on a Games Daily? It was on a Games Daily, where I read through the list of games that were coming out this day on PlayStation. A sketchbook about her son popped up, and I was like, this sounds like something I have to play. The quick synopsis on Steam is, through a narrative based on Red Ribbon's new album, Planet X, experience a broken-hearted girl's journey through thoughts, daydreams, and music. And so if you're watching, you see that there's a bunch of choices for stuff, and then sketches pop up. And so my thought was that, watching this trailer on Games Daily, that it's kind of like choose your own adventure. You go through, you pick the things, you get different drawings, you get different things. It's not really that. It's way more just this merger of the album Planet X from Red Ribbon, who I did not know before, but are actually really great, and I enjoy the music, and have them and have listened to them on Spotify since. But it's this just mix of the entire album. It's the entire album, Planet X, mixed with all these different vignettes with this woman who's gone through a breakup. And so, yeah, you go through and you pick the different words, and then at the end, the drawings appear no matter what. I don't think they changed based on what words you pick, but at the end, you get like a, not poem in terms of like, it's all rhyming and that kind of thing, but I guess a journal entry kind of, but more abstract. That is like the words have changed based on what you pick to focus on. So there's that to it. I didn't get much out of any of them. You know what I mean? It is very much about the music and the visuals, and then just thing. And they're very simple, when Barrett was showing you. It's usually a static drawing that then has a little bit maybe of it's it's not animation, but then moving and putting things in there to give it a little bit of things, and then the new sketchbooks popping up or whatever. It was an interesting exercise, like we talked about with this PlayStation. What was your pick on PlayStation this week? Isn't something you're like, you have to play this necessarily. It can be. It's something I did play. It is, again, you can go back and watch the games daily live, where I'm like, this sounds neat. I want to try it. Blah blah blah. It is an easy platinum. I did not know that when I did it. It was not done on that for that on purpose. I want it on the record. I do have the platinum in it. But it was an interesting exercise more than anything. All right, and I think it's $5 on PSN. It's not. Would I recommend it? No, probably. Like, I think I'm glad I did it.
Is it better than Memoir Blue?
Memoir, I don't think it's the same, because Memoir Blue is way more interactive. Like, this is very much like one of the trophies is don't touch anything. Like, just let it play. Like, let it play. Like, at the end, you have to, hit advance or whatever. But now that does change the, the little storybook or whatever the journaling thing is. It changes what she says at the end, which was interesting. But, like, it is very much something.
Which experience did you enjoy more?
Damn, Janet, that's a great question. I enjoyed a Memoir Blue probably more.
Damn,
because this is one that I could take my eyes off of. Like, once I understood what was happening, I was like, oh, okay, and I kind of went back to email. I liked the music, and I like the visuals, and I like the idea of it, but I don't think it does anything where I was like, holy shit, this really stuck with me. Or I need.
We play all the same games, so I was like, should I play this? And then you know me too. I let that hole in a beat. I'm like 1.5 hours. That sounds like just the amount of time that I have.
Well, I mean, keep in mind too, if you don't choose anything, there you go. You know what I mean? Like, you're just listening to an album. Like, it's how much you want to. If you just let it sit there and play, like you can turn and watch occasionally what's happening in the visual, but then do whatever you want. It is what it is. Did you guys freeze? I think you froze.
No,
you
we're
okay. God, you were both.
I was sitting really still.
I was sitting still, and I was like, "Oh, this is a fucking freeze." That's
and we're
good,
just
guys.
like taking in.
We should do that
you
sometime,
said.
Janet. Like playing a freeze.
I mean, that was a perfect one. Again, for me, an interesting experience. I'm glad I tried it or whatever. You know what I mean? I'm glad I spent kind of funny money on it. But not something you need to do. But I didn't hate it. You know what I mean? If it sounds interesting and you want to go do it, feel free. It's a cool art experience. It's a cool art installation. If that
Did you do Kid A? Did you play Kid A Amnesiac?
I never did. No.
Kid Amnesiac. You should. Why haven't you? Is there a reason you haven't?
Yeah, because it came up and it was very confusing what it was, and then they re-explained it, and I was like, okay, cool. I don't know.
You should. Do you like Radiohead? I don't.
No,
I
mean, I can find Creeps and Nice Song
outside of Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift and Weezer. That's pretty much in country. Those are the. Those
kind of got him to
sums
pop
up.
punk for like a couple months, but that was about it.
First off, no, fuck off. I was into pop punk before you were even.
I got him into modern pop punk for a couple months, and then that was.
I was into modern.
You
Oh no,
should-
actually,
you
you
know
have
what?
given me modern choices.
You're an open-minded player, and you're into the weird. You're the weird art kid. Your fellow weird art kid, Greg. I'm gonna say you should go play Kid Amnesiac because I think it's. I really have again. I do like Radiohead, and I do think it hits a little bit better if you know that album, because then you're like, oh, I'm like inside the horns of like National Anthem, like, and that kind of hits a little bit better if you know that album already. But I think it's a really fun, weird museum. All of us did the Dreams thing where we were like part of like the judging for the Impies, and like the thing that ultimately won was I don't want to mess up the name of it. The
Idealium.
Yeah. Which is a museum experience. And like, I totally thought of Kid Amnesiac when I was playing that. And I love that they're both kind of really different, but yeah, go play it. I think you'll at least enjoy having experienced it.
Downloading.
I will also say it's like it can be a little spooky at times, but it's not like jump scary or anything.
Okay.
Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, just as a quick warning in a sense, if you're like not looking for
I like getting scared. Like
kind of eerie, little vibe. But yeah, I'm very curious as to what you're going to think about it.
Okay. Blessing, what's your PlayStation pick? What'd you pick on PlayStation this week?
So earlier in the week, I tweeted out because it's backlog season, and I've been looking for games to go back to. And like I had a lot of plans, right? Where I was like, okay, I've not finished Guardians of the Galaxy.
Everybody's got plans.
Yeah. You make plans and God laughs. The Guardians of the Galaxy laughed at me. But yeah, no, I was like, I could finish Guardians. I could go back to Mass Effect 2 because I'm still halfway through that. Like, I could pick up Tunic. I like had a list of games. Pokemon Legends, Arceus, like a lot of games where I was like, I either pick this up and put it down, or these are games that came out. I just didn't have the time to play them at the time. I was feeling a bit bored, and so I was, and for some reason, I didn't feel like picking those games back up. What I instead felt like doing was finding a game that I either hadn't heard of or something that would speak to me, that would surprise me. And so I started just looking through the PlayStation Store of games that had come out, like indie games that would satiate the appetite I had. Because I think I was also looking for something that might feel more actiony, maybe something that was like along the lines of a Katana Zero or something like that. As I was looking, I saw Anno Mutationum, and I was like, "Ooh, this looks cool," but I've not heard of it. It probably isn't that good, and I just skipped it. And then like me and Greg saw it yesterday at the indie thing. We're like, "Oh fuck, all right, this actually does look cool. Let's download this."
I'm having so much fun with it. I can't wait to get back to it tonight. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and like I booted up right before this episode of PS Love You XOXO. The thing is, that isn't my my pick for PlayStation this week. My pick for PlayStation this week is the reason why I started Anno Mutationum, and I was like, no, I can't play this right now. I got to go back to this other game, and that game is 13 Sentinels. So after I looked through the PlayStation Store, or after I looked through the PlayStation Store, I put out a tweet where I was like, hey, people that know my taste, now that it's backlog season, what's a game that I should dig into that I'd fall in love with? And I was surprised by how many people said 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. It was like at least like 10 different people under this tweet were like, yo, 13 Sentinels. Even Dinga Bakaba from like Arcane responded. He was like, you should play some 13 Sentinels. And I was like, you know what? I started 13 Sentinels back in 2020 when it came out. I played about 3 hours of it. I fell off for 2 reasons. One, the gameplay, the real-time strategy stuff in the game scared me off a bit. Like, it was never a thing that like was too difficult, and I never felt like I didn't comprehend it, but I tend to not be a real-time strategy person. Like, there's never been a time where I got super into something that was real-time strategy, and so like I thought that was a quick signal of, oh man, maybe I shouldn't get too deep into this because I'm not going to dig it. And then also story-wise, it felt so disparate between what was going on with the different characters, and like it had a really slow start, and like there was a lot of anime girls and like short skirts and like stuff the perverted stuff where I was like, I don't know if this hit with me. Maybe I'll bounce off of this. But like I could tell that it was building up to something that could have been cool, but I figured it's not gonna be for me. After so many people recommended it, I was like, all right, I gotta check this out because people are going real hard for 13 Sentinels, way more than I would have even imagined. Picked it up. I am now 7 hours in, and I am totally into it. I am enthralled with what's going on in the story. It is like what I've described before, which is, 13 Sentinels, there are 13 characters that are like the player characters that you bounce between. The story is out of order, and again, like so disjointed in the way that you finish a chapter and then you go back to the character select screen, and you can choose to continue playing with that character you're just playing with, or you can pick one of the other characters. And as you go, you unlock more characters. I gotta assume that there's a total of 13 characters, because each of the characters,
it's in the title.
yeah, it's in the title, 13 Sentinels. Because I believe, and I'm not far enough to know this for sure, but I believe that each of the 13 characters are going to be the 13 pilots for the 13 Sentinels that they're driving in this game to like fight against
some kind of Octopath Traveler kind of situation. Plus, come on.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. Yeah,
some
exactly.
Kind of 13 Sentinels?
Or are we some kind of triangle strategy?
Yeah, what are we? Some kind of 13. So like, yeah, that's kind of what the setup of the game is. And in the first 3 hours, which is what I had played before, it felt almost like I was playing different games where I would hop into one character story and they're like, cool, yeah, I'm a student at a school and I like action movies and I have a weird headache and let me go to the nurse's office. And I'm like, oh, this is weird. And I hop into a different character story and they're like, I'm from the past. Like it is 1945 and I'm just a soldier. And you hop out and you hop into another character story and they're like, oh man, I'm in the same school as the other kid, but I just found a little robot that's kind of like ET. And like, the stories are so weird at first and so separate and different, but like the more you play, the more you start to have those intertwining moments of characters meeting other characters and things looping back around and explanations for things that is like, oh, this is why this guy was in the past and this is how he relates to this other character. And the more you play, the way that these characters intertwine with each other, I think is so fascinating. It's so good. And then also the way that like the game lets you choose how you want to play in terms of the character stories you want to further in that moment, I think really makes it, because they really do give you the freedom of, right now I have 10 characters unlocked that I can go into their stories. I was immediately fascinated by the character who met the little robot ET character. So I was like, I'm going to further her story. As I'm going through her story, she, of course, crosses paths with another character. And I was like, oh, shit, this other character seems cool. And she seems necessary for me to understand more about the character who I'm more invested in. And the more I pull on those threads, the more all the characters start to like have things where it's like, oh, shit, all right, this guy was over here. Okay, how do I figure out like how this guy got here? Let me go figure out his story. And that stuff kind of slowly builds and lets you kind of go at it at your own pace. So you're only really pulling at the stuff that interests you. But the genius of it is that the more you pull at that stuff, the more stuff starts to interest you. And so like now I'm at a place where I have 4 to 5 different characters available to me to like further the stories. Some of the characters are locked off because I got to do other story shit to like re-unlock progression in their stories. But for the 5 characters who I have that I can jump into at any time, I'm like, yo, I'm wondering what any of them are doing right now, because like I'm not checked up on Iori Fuyusaka, I'm not checked up on Jiro Kurabe, and it's like all
You
the
gotta
names
check up on them.
you got to check up on Kurabe and all like all of the characters. It's like the game takes place in Japan, right? And so all the characters are like have Japanese names, and it's the thing of like a lot of names, especially with 13 characters. I'm like, okay, oh, who was this guy? All right, this guy was this guy. But the more I play, the more I like really start to care about the characters, and the more I'm like, oh, dude, yeah, I for sure got to check up on Fuyusaka. I for sure got to check up on these people. But yeah, I've been very surprised with it so far. The story is insane, right? It is like sci-fi. Invasion, like alien invasion maybe, but also could be just weird like multi-dimensional invasion stuff. Like it's kind of weird right now, but like if you're into that kind of thing, you'll be into it. Again, it's like big sentinel stuff, and so if you like mechs and if you like big war and big battles, it's that stuff as well. The art style is also very gorgeous. Like art style for me is like maybe one of the best things about the game. You look at it, and right now Barrett has like the
Yeah, I got a question, Bless. Why do they gotta be naked when they're in the mechs?
It's you know,
Perverts!
Why is Quiet naked? It's because she needs to breathe.
She
through
needs to breathe through her
skin.
skin.
Yeah, these characters, they got to be naked to pilot the Sentinels. Who knows?
All of them naked?
Yeah.
When they're in the Sentinels, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, all of them are naked when they're in the Sentinels.
It's fun. I'm glad to see you connecting with this game, because it's like that thing where I remember Imran loving it. And I remember how many people loved it, and it's a story game, obviously. And I remember I started it, and it just didn't click for me. Like the world, I wasn't about it. So it's funny that you're into it, and I'm into Anno, Mutation as or whatever.
Mutation
Such a terrible name. Just call it
bad
Anno
name.
Mutation. Not why are you adding EM at the end? But anyways, great game. Having a fun time with it. Can't wait to play more of it. But that's that cyberpunk world with a cool combat system I really like. I talked about it on Gamescast. I won't bug you here, but I'm glad to see you're into this and feeling it.
Yeah,
are you gonna see it all the way through? You think?
Yeah, I don't know how long it is, and I'm very scared to check because I don't want to check and have it say 50 hours and have me go, no, I can't invest that time, because I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen. And so I'm just going with it. I'm just trying to play for as long as I'm enjoying it and not worry about finishing it. But like at this rate, I think I got to see it through because I'm so into it. And like people are saying that when I tweeted out about it today, that like, yo, I'm into it. People were replying saying that like, dude, just wait. Like it gets crazier and crazier because again, I'm only 7 hours into this thing. But yeah, no, I'm really digging it. Also, like I was saying, right, the art style is gorgeous. It's like hand drawn art style where you walk around these worlds, and like the lighting is the thing that's blown me away. Where you'll have in the background, like you'll have a lighting source, and the way that it peers through characters as they're walking by, and like the art that they have in the backgrounds. This is all gorgeous. And in fact, it's one that Greg, I know you said you weren't clicking with it at first. Like it strikes me as a game that Greg would get into, that you would get into. And like in the way that I didn't click within the first few hours, I'd wonder if like if you kept playing, if it would start to click with you in that way, because it is very like it's a narrative game, and the story and the characters all are like they're engaging in the way where you start to really get into like their motivations and like wonder about the mystery of what's going on in the world. And it's not like super like I want to say super anime, but I don't think that's not the right way to put it, right? It's not like convoluted, I guess is the thing I'm talking about. Right?
I think one of the reasons I didn't click with it, and again, like I don't even remember it that well, but I remember the story's interest or whatever. I'm going through the talkie with everybody, which I do appreciate quite a bit in games. But then I remember not enjoying the combat that much. And that's one of those things I was complimenting Anno so much yesterday with, right? Where it was like, you're in this, 2.5D, explore the world, talk to all these people, do the things. But then you get into side scroller, beat 'em up combat with your gun and your sword and your dodge roll. And I was like, oh, this is really fun. Like I like both parts equally. Whereas I felt with 13 Sentinels, I'm trying to get into the story, but then I'm also like, I didn't enjoy fighting in the mechs.
Yeah. See, I'm the same way. Like the fighting in the mechs is my least favorite part. And I'm not done that for a while. Like the game starts off with a prologue where you meet probably like 8 of the characters and you go through their prologue stories, and then you do that, and like those require you to do the combat. But then after that, like the real game opens up, and since it's opened up, I've not done combat in 4 hours. And I'm sure at some point it's going to make me do combat, but it lets you choose what you want to do from the get-go. And so like I've only been doing story stuff for the last 4 to 5 hours of playing, and I'm sure like I'm going to hit the roadblocks and then it's going to make me do the combat. But I can't imagine the combat is going to be much. Like I can't imagine I'm sitting there for 30 minutes to an hour at a time just going through combat sequences. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people are like, "Oh, prepare yourself." But I've not had much combat since getting out of the prologue, which I've been very happy with.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we hope Blessing will make it through 13 Sentinels. But you've made it through another episode of PS I Love You XOXO, unless that is you're a patreon.com/kindoffunnygames supporter. Of course, on patreon.com/kindoffunnygames, you can write in to be part of the show. You could be watching us record the show live. And of course, you could get the post show we're about to record all on patreon.com/kindoffunnygames. Plus, you get those benefits for the XCast, Gamescast, and Kind of Funny Games Daily. But no matter where you get the show, thank you for your support. Remember, we record it on Thursdays, posted on Fridays on youtube.com/kindoffunnygames, roosterteeth.com, and podcast services around the globe. Before we go, Janet, where can people keep up with you?
You can follow me across the internet under the handle Gameonysus. That's GameONYSUS.
Blessing, stop being a pervert. And until next time, no.
Pervert.
I know, I fucked it up. I know, I'm tired. It's
Just
been a long show.
let the man go.
He called me a pervert. I got a fire back. Even though he played Metal Gear Solid 5, the game were quiet as half naked the whole time.
Blessing, my dog died.
That I also love.
I'm sad.
It's hard to keep up with gaming and not just have to see a lot of naked people. Ghost Tsushima, those booty cheeks in the like, what is the little, not hot springs?
Yeah, hot springs.
Yeah. You know,
it happens. So every now and then you see
critical
booty
to the
cheeks. That's
story.
gaming.
You know what I mean?
That's life. Are you adults or you children? Ladies and gentlemen, until next time, it's been our pleasure to serve you.